Se-young, a middle schooler who looks severely injured, is rushed to a hospital for immediate care. Two police officers learn about the situation. With quick thinking, they narrow the list of suspects to 8 people, all belonging to a group of delinquents. The investigation team confirms that the attackers were wearing middle school uniforms. If this news gets out, people might not think Se-young deserves justice because his attackers are just kids. This makes the officers wonder how they can bring these criminals to justice. Se-young wakes up in a hospital bed. He is nothing but skin and bones, meaning he has been in a coma for a long time. His aunt, who is supposed to be in another country because of her marriage, is there holding his hand. Se-young is confused. His brain struggles to understand what is happening. He starts to hallucinate, seeing the 8 evil faces that put him in this state, laughing like maniacs. This triggers his PTSD, and he goes into shock, shaking violently. His aunt, terrified, screams for the doctor. She cannot bear to see her nephew like this. The doctor rushes in, hearing her cries. He realizes Se-young is having a seizure and quickly calms him with a sedative. He notices pierce marks on Se-young's hands, indicating this has happened before. Se-young desperately opens his eyes again, trying to hear what his aunt is saying to the doctor. He realizes he has been in a coma for 9 months. Thankfully, he doesn't fall back into a coma, which relieves his aunt. She peels an apple for him to eat, explaining that he needs nutrition to recover. While peeling the apple, she tells him that his father thought he would never wake up. She also reveals that Se-young has a mother, which is surprising since she is nowhere to be found. Apparently, Se-young's mother hasn't given up and wants to either take revenge or bring the 8 criminals to justice, according to his aunt. Se-young's parents did everything they could in the past 9 months, but they failed to punish the criminals because they are just middle schoolers. The court decided to settle the case by offering Se-young's parents money. However, Se-young's dad refused and kept fighting for justice, but unfortunately, it led to nothing. Se-young's aunt also mentioned that the assailants were only suspended from school and the teachers involved only received a legal warning letter. Hearing this, Se-young's eyes filled with tears. His aunt continued, telling him how much both of his parents had suffered this past year. They begged people to sign a petition and wandered around the city like beggars, holding posters. They pleaded with everyone to give their signatures in order to get their son justice. Not only that, they even got to their knees in front of all the powerful people they knew. They told them how unfair and unjust it all was. But still, nobody helped them because nobody cared. Every time they tried to post their side of the story on the internet, it was taken down immediately. Anyone on the legal side who tried to help them either got fired or transferred. To sum it up, it means that the 8 kids' parents are people who have strong influence in this country, and that is why they aren't getting punished. This led both Se-young's dad and mom to become so devastated that they took their lives in front of the world. They hoped that someone, after their deaths, would finally care and fight for justice. Learning so casually that both of his parents have taken their own lives, Se-young became lost for words. He screamed at the top of his lungs in anguish and regretted ever going into a coma, as all of this happened when he was sleeping. After regaining composure, Se-young asked his aunt to continue. How did his parents take their lives, and what followed after that? His aunt, who struggled to find words, told Se-young that his father and mother burned themselves to death. But the bystanders there only recorded the incident on their phones and didn't even bother to help. Eventually, when the emergency ambulance arrived, it was too late. Both of them were nothing more than ashes at that point. Because of their self-sacrifice, the assailants were once again brought to attention and got proper punishment. All 8 of them received juvenile detention for 2 years. Besides, the teachers involved were also fired from their jobs. Furthermore, the parents of those 8 criminals held a press conference and apologized to the entire country. But because the video of Se-young's parents taking their lives spread through the internet like wildfire, media and press were still out for more blood. The entire country wanted justice for Se-young. The president paid Se-young a visit and wished for his well-being. But that was all the justice system could do, as the assailants were still kids who, under the law, couldn't get anything more than juvenile detention. This makes Se-young think that his parents' sacrifice had no impact whatsoever. Sometime in the future, a man from the management office of a local building shakes hands with a woman. He rents her a place and tells her that her rent is due on the 2nd day of every month. He also tells her that if she comes across any inconvenience or problems, she can contact their management office. The woman thinks that she has the right to make complaints directly to the owner. In that case, the man makes it clear to her that she should only contact the management office, even if it's an emergency. He warns her, saying that the owner of her apartment is not someone who is fond of human interaction. He also adds that she should never go to the rooftop, as the owner apparently lives there in the rooftop room. Making everything clear to her, the man deems that there's nothing further to discuss and takes his leave. The owner, who lives in the rooftop room, reveals himself to be none other than Se-young. He has completely shut himself in and is surrounded by many trash bags because he never tends to leave his room. He reveals that he is constantly on his computer, looking for ways to take revenge on his 8 assailants. He finds the Sherman Group, Bluing Media, and the Good Field Company, who were perhaps the ones who refused to help his parents and help the criminals by taking down their case. Suddenly, a woman arrives at Se-young's door, who apparently has rushed over from the hospital just to see him. The woman comes inside the room, scolding Se-young immediately for living like a total shut-in. Seeing the dozens of trash bags, she becomes totally disgusted at his behavior, revealing herself to be his health consultant. The woman tells Se-young that she needs to get done with their session quickly today, as she has to go on a group blind date. She asks Se-young about his arms, legs, back, and eyes, and learns from him that every part of his body still hurts. She writes his blood pressure without even checking, because perhaps she is too disgusted to touch his arm. After writing the report, the woman tells Se-young to move on already, as it has already been 2 years. She begs him to go outside at least once, even if he doesn't want to go back to his school to study. She advises him to meet some people and live once again like a human being. The woman leaves, completely disappointed in him, but her words don't impact Se-young at all. He just goes back to using his computer and plugs in his phone, which has the wholesome wallpaper of his parents holding him when he was a baby. He then hacks into a social media group chat, where he reads the conversation between 5 of his 8 assailants who are preparing to come back to their country. He reveals that they are not in juvenile detention, but in the United States. Thanks to their influential parents, they had the freedom to party and go out on dates. Se-young realized that his parents' sacrifices meant nothing, because they faced no punishment. He returned to his bed, wondering if there was any way to bring them to justice. He fell asleep, desperate for revenge. At that moment, a mysterious meteorite crashed onto his rooftop. The crashing sound woke Se-young. He assumed it was a thief, or worse, the assailants who had come to beat him again. Mustering courage, Se-young hesitantly opened the door. He found a gleamy ray of light revolving around a mysterious sword stuck in the ground. Se-young, confused about the sword's origin, began to look around out of curiosity. The rooftop door was locked, meaning no one came from the stairs. Knowing no one would climb the walls of a 10-story building, Se-young wondered again how the sword got there. As confusion overwhelmed him, he started screaming, unable to figure it out. Not wanting to get involved in an Excalibur legend, he went back to his room. He lay on his bed, trying to go back to sleep, not caring about what was happening outside. But the mysterious sword wouldn't allow him to ignore it. It started buzzing loudly, creating drum beats and horns that teleported Se-young to a battlefield. He found himself surrounded by gladiators, led by a man with the sword, fighting against an army of giants, dragons, and mysterious creatures. He realized the sword had a deeper meaning to its sudden appearance. The scene shifted, and Se-young was taken to a future point in the battle. This time, he saw the enemy army's corpses piled up, with the hero's sword resting on top. Again, Se-young realized the sword's legacy. As he returned to reality, he assumed it was all a dream. But when he stepped outside and found the sword engulfed in flames, he realized it was not a dream, but an opportunity. The flames quickly turned into a sea of fire, prompting Se-young to seek shelter in his room. He filled a water bucket to put out the fire, but he was too weak to lift it. So, he reduced the amount of water and poured it onto the sword, which did nothing. The fire seemed endless. He continued filling and pouring water several times until he finally managed to put out the fire. His entire body starts to ache because of all that effort. He then notices a hose pipe right there, attached to a water tap. He could have used it if he had paid attention to his surroundings. In any case, Se-young goes back to his room to take a nap. Once again, he finds the sword engulfed in flames. After 4 days of the same thing happening, he gets used to it. He casually puts it out using the hose pipe. But the one thing Se-young doesn't get used to is the drum beats, which constantly disrupt his sleep. Every time he goes to bed, he hears them. He soon figures out that every time the clock hits 12, the sword starts the drum beats itself, and it engulfs in flames. So, he waits for it to happen and puts out the flames before they can engulf the sword at all. After taking care of the fire, Se-young goes back to using his computer. He begins to investigate the sword and finds the answer to his questions. The internet suggests that the sword is the work of evil. So, Se-young sprays it with holy water and recites prayers to exorcise any evil spirits in it. But that backfires, and the sword engulfs in flames once again. He realizes that perhaps the sword is not the work of Satan. Not being able to deal with this stupid thing every day, Se-young decides to do whatever it takes to destroy the sword. He brings a toolbox. As he takes out a hammer from the toolbox, he reveals his intentions of beating the sword with it. But once he smashes the sword with it, his hammer is the one to break. He realizes that he would need a bigger weapon. So, he comes back with a steel baseball bat. But even that doesn't manage to put a scratch on the sword. It ricochets back to Se-young because of the shock wave, hitting him on the face and flying away with a huge bump on his forehead. Se-young decides to go all out this time. He accepts the Excalibur storyline, being forced by the sword itself. He uses both of his hands to pull out of the ground. As Se-young uses all of his strength to do so, the sword gets engulfed in flames once again and turns into a large ball of light, which forcefully enters his body. It shows all the memories of the sword's original wielder. It shows the hero's life, how he played an army of demons, how he started his own family, trained his own son, and passed the legacy on to him. As all these memories enter Se-young's brain, his head starts to feel like it's about to fall apart. But he manages to survive through the pain. And not only that, he also manages to lift the sword out of the ground, revealing that it is truly quite a long sword. Meanwhile, the tenants of the building, who have also heard these loud noises coming from the rooftop for the past couple of days, gather together to discuss the matter. They tell each other how hard it has been to fall asleep at night. The loud noises keep them awake. Nobody knows who is making the noise or what they're doing on the roof. It's causing so much commotion. Intrigued, they call the building manager, who simply says, "The screams and noises are none of your business." Se-young wakes up a few hours later. The hero's memories still flow inside him. He feels despair, happiness, sadness, fury, guilt, and hatred all at the same time. The emotions spring inside him as if they are alive. Se-young feels like he has lived through ages untold and unimaginable. He gets up from the floor. The mysterious sword is still attached to his right arm. He realizes that he has managed to lift it up from the ground. He wonders how he managed to do so, since the sword is almost a meter long. It cannot be wielded by a weakling like him. The bigger question is, how did the sword not affect the tenants below? Logically, it should have pierced through the ceiling to the floor below because of how long it is. Having no answers, Se-young just lifts the sword up for now. Because of how heavy it is, he fails to stand still and falls to the ground. The sword crashes on top of him. After a long struggle, he succeeds in putting the sword against the wall and touches it. This activates a memory of the hero and lets him know that the sword is called the War Sword. The War Sword apparently brings thunder and storms to its enemies. It has many legends and legacies behind the name. Se-young's heart still aches because of the overflow of emotions. As he starts to give up, the hero appears before him and whispers, "Never change and never give up the will and the courage to fight." With the hero's memories motivating Se-young, he lifts up the sword once again and wields it perfectly. The sword shows him how the hero once fought, using it freely and without any restrictions. As the technique comes to Se-young, he naturally manages to replicate the hero's technique by following the images inside his head. He learns how to use the War Sword just like that. However, he is still physically weak, so he still needs to work on building his core strength in order to utilize the sword to the fullest. As he loses all his energy because of using the sword, he calls his health consultant, Bora, over the phone. Bora immediately finds it unusual that Se-young would call her, even though he has never wanted to get treated for these past 2 years. The woman, Bora, reveals that when Se-young called her, she was on a blind date with a rich man. As she picked up the call, she heard 2 words coming from Se-young's mouth, "Help me." So, as a dutiful health consultant, she had to ditch her date, who, to be fair, was kind of ugly and fat, so no losses there. Currently, at Se-young's rooftop room, Bora sees that Se-young's arms have badly swollen up. Taking a primary look at it, she assumes that he has somehow sprained the ligaments of his wrists. But Se-young states that not only his arms, but also his hips and back have swollen up, claiming that he was doing exercises when that happened. Bora finds it hard to believe that a shut-in who hasn't stepped outside of the front door for the past 2 years would be out exercising, and begins to laugh at Se-young, thinking that he is lying to her. Still, She finds it unusual that his entire body would get damaged by doing any exercise, and she gets curious to learn exactly what this boy did. Se-young's phone rings, but because he's unable to get up, Bora picks up the call, telling the person on the other side that she's his nurse in charge of his regular checkups. After getting Bora's details, the person on the other side asks how Se-young is doing, and asks questions about his screaming, indicating that he is his manager who had learned about the situation from the apartment holders and neighbors. Bora tells the manager that Se-young is doing fine and that his mental health is also all right. But the manager doesn't believe her, and so Bora redirects the call over to Se-young, who himself tells the manager not to worry about him. Bora hangs up the call after learning that the tenants here have been complaining for the past couple of days because of the screaming and noises that Se-young has been causing in the middle of the night. She asks Se-young about the screams and noises, but he claims that it's nothing, and once again lies, saying that he was exercising. Bora, who wants to scold Se-young for acting recklessly, stops herself as she remembers the time when Se-young could barely eat after recovering from his coma. So now that he is getting better and calmer, she feels glad and treats his swollen ligaments with bandages and casts, instructing him to change them only when necessary, telling him that she will come again to check up on him 2 weeks later. She takes her leave, even though Se-young doesn't want that, as he knows he will recover by that time and will have to give Bora money for the checkup for no reason. Later that day, Se-young, who had put the sword under the bed to keep it hidden from Bora, brings it out, showing how obsessed he has become with it already. Then he puts it on the bed with the last bit of energy that he has. His arm starts to ache again due to using it so much. But at that moment, the voice of the hero commends him for not backing down and not giving up. Of course, Se-young has no idea who this voice in his head belongs to. So, he demands to know who is speaking to him. But the voice doesn't answer him. Instead, it continues motivating him, telling him to run with the sword and swing it as much as possible if he wants to have the sword's power. Se-young, not understanding how swinging the sword will make him powerful, goes online. He looks up many articles about two-handed swords. He wants to learn how the users become strong by mastering the sword. Realizing he needs a similar plan, he wonders how he will do it. His whole body already aches with pain. A week passes, and Bora comes to check on him again. She sees that his body has healed completely, even though it normally takes 3 weeks. She thinks that Se-young took some illegal medicine to get better without telling her. Se-young explains that's not the case, but doesn't say more. Bora tells Se-young not to overdo his exercises just because he can move freely again. After scolding him, she slams the door and leaves his place. With her gone, Se-young gets up. He reveals that being weak and frail was an act, so she wouldn't suspect anything. He also reveals that his wounds heal completely in less than a week. He realizes that the sword will make him strong and mighty. He is determined to train and goes outside on the roof to swing his war sword. But he still finds it hard to lift the sword with both hands. He decides to build his strength and stamina first. He needs to be worthy to wield the sword. But to build stamina, he has to run. That means going outside, which he has avoided for 2 years. He even hesitates to use the stairs. So, he decides to build stamina later. But he remembers that the hero in his memory ran for an hour, carrying this war sword when he was his age. To be more like the hero, Se-young musters some courage. He attaches the sword to his back. He decides to do 3 sets of 10 push-ups to build his strength. Knowing he has no strength, he reduces it to 1 set of 10. But he can't even do 1. His hips and waist give up before his will. Acknowledging how weak he is, Se-young returns to his room, disappointed. He eats some food. In the evening, he heads out again. This time, he is determined to build his stamina first. He carries the sword on his back again. He goes in front of the stairway door, revealing his intent to venture into the outside world for the first time in the past 2 years. As he enters the stairway, he carefully puts his foot on each step. He has completely forgotten how to walk downward. While struggling to even move, he accidentally knocks himself over and rolls all the way down to the 5th floor. Everyone wonders how this guy didn't end up in a coma again. Se-young, still determined to become stronger whatever it may take, gets up with a desperate need to continue. After climbing all the way down for more than an hour of struggle, rest, and hesitation, Se-young chooses to fall back to the rooftop instead. Extreme exhaustion takes over, but he persists. Getting up here means not being able to take revenge on his 8 assailants. With his parents' scene burning inside of him, Se-young becomes determined to go back to the stairway one more time. He makes a full round trip from downstairs to upstairs. He follows the same regime for the next few weeks and increases his overall strength and stamina. No longer considering himself a shut-in, he throws out all of the trash bags on the road for the cleaners to pick them up. He appears to have a more muscular body now, which makes him look less like an undead skeleton. Unlike before, he cooks food for himself and consistently does muscle-building exercises whenever he gets the chance. His appetite has increased, as he reveals that he is hungry all the time, even though he eats a lot now. Most importantly, he can now do a total of 100 push-ups, whereas a few weeks ago, he couldn't even do half a push-up. Finding peace and ecstasy in the painful training, Se-young keeps going and becomes even stronger over time. He runs from the top floor stairs to the ground floor stairs every night for a total of 8 rounds, but he doesn't even break a sweat. Then, following his regular routine, he swings the war sword 100 times. The voice of the hero, or to be more precise, the memories of the hero inside Se-young's head, instructs him to swing the blade as slowly as possible, because, in that way, he will be able to fully master the blade's movements. The voice then asks Se-young what his end goal is and why he is trying to become strong. In response to this obvious question, Se-young reveals his purpose, stating that he wants revenge. Revenge for the beating he took, revenge for the endless sufferings his parents have been through, true revenge for the unjust law, and revenge for his parents' deaths. The hero's memories show that the hero has also been through a path of revenge because of loss and regrets, just like Se-young. Because his only son and wife have also been burned down alongside his house. Seeing the hero's memories in his sleep, Se-young wakes up with teary eyes. However, such memories only help him become more stern and committed to his path, to seek revenge. On the other hand, Se-young's nurse, Bora, sneaks to the front of his rooftop room. She sends him a message that she will be coming there in an hour. She is actually in front of his front door, hoping to surprise him. Bora comes close to the door, but gets surprised herself as Se-young comes out. He now has a new, bulky body, and he tells her to come inside. Bora checks up on him and sees that his blood pressure is very high. She then asks him about his physical condition. In response, Se-young tells her that every part of his body hurts a little. Now that Bora knows that Se-young is in perfect health condition and has fully recovered, she doesn't fall for his lies. She tells him to go back to studying at middle school instead of goofing off. Although Se-young is pretty old for middle school now, there's still the possibility that he will get bullied like last time, which led to his coma. She advises that he make some good friends this time, who will protect him when necessary. Se-young, whose school life has turned into his PTSD, gets furious. He makes it clear to Bora with his strong words that he will never be returning to school, ever again. Bora, who is too focused on Se-young's height, completely ignores what he just said. She asks how he went from being 5 feet 1 inch to 6 feet 5 inches. She also notices how muscular he has become, making her realize that the boy is lifting weights. She even presses his chest because that action doesn't fall under molestation. Hey, is anyone going to call men's rights activists here for Se-young, please? Being pleased by how much Se-young has grown, Bora takes her leave, hoping that she will have a taste of the once undead skeleton's mini muscular skeleton one day. He continues training with his heart set on strength. He forces himself past his limits to obtain the war sword's first power through the pledge of indomitability. In it, he will have to swing the sword a total of 10,000 times in a day without pausing. If he manages to do so, the voice tells him that he will be able to receive the blessing of the sword. Apparently, that blessing will bring unlimited power to his body. So, Se-young keeps training and training. For the next 12 months, the country holds a generational election and elects their new president. The new president, Jang Sung-chul, just like any other lying politician, tells citizens that he will be changing the country for the greater good. President Jang Sung-chul, who claims to be all about justice and law, gets a call from President Lee of the Shinhan Group. If I remember correctly, he is one of the parents of Se-young's assailant. Remember when Se-young was looking up the companies that helped the assailant flee from their punishments? The Shinjin Group was one of them. President Lee congratulates Sung-chul on winning the election. He reveals that he was the one who pulled a lot of strings to make Sung-chul president. Apparently, they are members of the same family. Speaking of family, Lee invites Sung-chul to a family get-together. He tells him to bend the rules and laws so the 8 kids who fled to the United States can come back. The president also thinks that those 8 kids have had a hard time in the United States and thinks they should get back as soon as possible. However, I don't agree with this guy. I know for a fact that those kids dated a lot, went out partying, and basically lived the dream of any struggling Asian. Lee is glad that Sung Chul thinks the same way he does, but find it quite natural, as Sung Chul's own daughter is one of the assailants who were sent to the United States. After ending the call with Lee, Sung Chul tells his assistant to make preparations for his daughter, Soo Young's, glorious return. He starts laughing like a total maniac soon after. At the ancient international airport, 3 spoiled brats, Eugene, Junhyuk, and Suho, make their return. They are greeted by Heewon, Dahoon, and Chong-soo, who have also returned for the United States from the flight before. As the 6 of them reunite, they wonder where the other 2, Soo-hyun and Soo-young, are. They ask Eugene if they didn't come with them. Eugene claims to not know where they are exactly, but for what she has heard, she assumes that they are somewhere off in Japan. They wanted to calm their minds before coming back to Korea. Apparently, Soo-hyun, who wants to cool his head, has been doing the same thing for the past 2 years, meaning that he is just goofing around and wasting her papa's hard-earned money. They move on to the main topic, which is finding the person who caused them so much trouble, Se-young. They reveal their intentions to take revenge on Se-young and make a solid plan so that no evidence can be traced this time. On the other hand, Se-young's aunt calls Se-young over the phone. Upon learning that he no longer wants to go back to school, she becomes concerned for him. Education is the basic necessity for a man to succeed, so she advises her dear nephew to not ruin his life like that. If it helps, she offers him to come stay with her family abroad. Se-young appreciates her kind offer, but still rejects it, telling her that he is still afraid of the outside world even after 3 years after the initial incident. But he assures her that he will be fine soon, telling her not to worry about him anymore. Se-young ends the call. He gets back to focusing on his main goal, to crush all his enemies, one by one. Now that he knows they will return to Korea, since the president's son is one of the attackers, he makes the necessary preparations to enact revenge. Meanwhile, a man arrives in front of Se-young's apartment building. He reveals that his team, in black, has been watching the location from different spots all day. They are making sure no one has been entering or leaving. After concluding that there are no signs of Se-young coming outside or going inside, they assume that either Se-young is not living there, or he has locked himself somewhere inside. Figuring out that the loser never steps out of his rooftop room, the man in black reports the situation to 2 of the attackers, whose goal is to take revenge on Se-young. As they learn that Se-young doesn't even go to school anymore, they wonder if they should make their attack team barge into Se-young's apartment and drag him out to them. But knowing that the absolute psycho, Soo-hyun, who is in Japan right now, has better ideas to torture Se-young, they hold off on their plan for now. It is revealed that Soo-hyun has become a member of the notorious Japanese mafia gang, the Yakuza. Se-young, on the other hand, finds the post of the attacker group, which shows that they have regrouped, with the exception of Soo-hyun and Soo-jang, who are still abroad. He gets so furious seeing their happy faces that it makes him twitch. So, to get rid of their smiles, he gets ready and waits for Soo-hyun and Soo-jang to also make their return. On the other side, the 2 lead villains make their entrance to Japan at the Narita International Airport. There, they are greeted by 2 new friends who are affiliated with the Yakuza. As they all get inside the car, the Yakuza friends get to the point, as they know Soo-hyun is not a fan of chatting. He informs them that they have already told their older brother, who is an influential member of Yakuza, about their arrival in Japan. One of them, named Ri-wee, still can't believe that the daughter of South Korea's president is now their friend. But Soo-jang thinks that it's only natural that they are friends because they have the same goal of achieving power. They discuss how they're going to be operating in Japan as Yakuza when suddenly Soo-hyun gets the message from one of his attacker friends that they are about to mess with Se-young first and apologizes beforehand for playing with their toys first. Meanwhile, 2 men in black are sent to kidnap Se-young from his apartment at midnight. Upon reaching there, they discuss who will be picking the lock of Se-young's house. While they talked about such minor details, they entered the building. They were completely pissed that professionals like them were assigned such baby tasks, such as kidnapping a middle schooler. However, what they didn't know was that Se-young was not your ordinary middle schooler. He was overpowered. One of the 2 kidnappers broke into the apartment main building and came to the rooftop alone. When he saw the room Se-young lived in didn't even have a window, it made him wonder how a person could even live in such a horrid place. Suddenly, the door to Se-young's room opened. The kidnapper assumed that nobody was inside, as the lights were off as well. However, Se-young, who was waiting patiently to ambush the kidnapper from the darkness, took care of the matter soon. Meanwhile, the bald kidnapper, who had been waiting for more than a few minutes in front of the building, wondered why it took his partner so long to kidnap a middle schooler. He didn't know that the middle schooler had actually kidnapped his partner. He headed inside to see if something had gone wrong and came to the rooftop. There, he found the door to Se-young's room open. Assuming that it was his partner who had left the door open and was inside to neutralize the kid, Baldy casually entered the room, leaving his guard wide open. But that turned out to be his biggest mistake, as Se-young's hand grabbed his mouth like a predator tiger and snatched him inside his lair. The next day, the police found the kidnapper's car still parked outside of Se-young's apartment building. Seeing the license plate, they realized that it was a rented car with no ownership to anyone's name. So, they called up the tow truck instead to take it away. Apparently, in Korea, guys who drive these rental cars occasionally leave them on the road and never come back to pick them up. So, the police naturally thought that might be the case and did not investigate further, which turned out to be lucky for Se-young. Meanwhile, the two assailants, Jun Hyak and Chong Soo, who were still waiting for their men to bring Se-young to them, got a message from Soo-young. She told them not to hurt Se-young, that she wanted to be the first one to play with her old toy. They decided not to tell her that their men hadn't captured and brought back Se-young yet. Getting impatient, they called their uncle, who was in charge of the secret agents team, and told him that the two men he sent them to do the task hadn't returned yet. Their uncle, Choi Jong, who was the president of a famous company, learned that his men hadn't returned yet, making him wonder if something had gone wrong. Chong Soo, whose father was in a higher position than his uncle Choi Jong, threatened to make him pay if he kept on failing them. So, Choi Jong quickly called up his two men, who didn't pick up the call, as they were revealed to be beaten to a pulp by the new terrifying version of Se-young. Soo-hyun and Soo-jang come back to Korea soon. Ho-jung, from the Secret Service, greets them. The woman takes Soo-jang away to bring her to her father. Another man approaches Soo-hyun. He reveals himself to be Choi, his teacher Chang-soo's uncle. Choi calls up one of the agents, Yum. Yum is very skilled at jobs like assassination. Choi tells him that the two rookies he sent yesterday to Se-young's house haven't been answering their calls and are basically out of reach. Yum asks his subordinates if they have heard from the two kidnappers. After learning that none of them have been able to reach them, he takes matters into his own hands. He goes straight to Se-young's house to investigate. In front of the house, he notices an illegal poster regarding a car being towed. Seeing the registration number, Yum realizes that the two kidnappers did come here, but he doesn't understand how and why they didn't come back to their car. He realizes that something must have happened to them during their kidnapping. He wonders if there is something dangerous hidden in Se-young's apartment building. Choi is totally enraged at all of his subordinates. He comes directly to Yum's office, looking for him. He personally wants to give him a good beating for getting humiliated by his nephew. One of his subordinates is at the office. He sees the president of their agency coming there and becomes baffled. Such a powerful man like him usually never steps foot there. The subordinate asks the president what brings him here today. Upon learning that he is here looking for Yum, the guy reveals that Yum has gone out with all of his subordinates on a mission. He implies that he has taken all his members to Se-young's apartment. Sensing the danger, Yum himself calls up Choi. He informs him that the two kidnappers he had sent to Se-young's building have actually gone missing. That is why he has called out all of the members to check out what is inside this building that has caused all of the members to have gone missing out of the blue. Understanding the issue at hand, Choi gives Yum permission to check the building himself. Yum, without any hesitation, gives his entire time to scavenge the building. All 50 men break through to the rooftop of the building in under a few minutes. Yum, who is behind them, starts hearing gasping and screaming noises coming from them. He realizes that a fight is going on there. Once he reaches the rooftop, the sound stops. He realizes that the fight is already over. But what he doesn't realize is that his team is on the losing end, not Se-young. As the complete buff mad lad makes his entry in front of Yum, he wets his pants. He is baiting know what kind of phenomenon this guy is, who is able to beat so many people who are skilled at fighting in few seconds. Se-young doesn't let him get an answer. She punches him in the face, knocking him out instantly and ending the fight. Soon after, a tenant in Se-young's building calls the police. She reports seeing many gang members enter the building, but none have left. She also mentions the screaming and shouting at night, which disturb her family's sleep. The police decide to investigate, unsure if there's a real problem or if the woman is simply a troublemaker. The two officers find the roof gate locked. One notices the stairway lock has been picked, suggesting something bad has happened. They immediately knock on the rooftop door, ordering Se-young to open it. He opens the door, revealing his tall stature, which intimidates the officers. One officer points his gun at Se-young, noticing the bloodied bodies of the gang members behind him. Soon, many police officers and a rescue team arrive at Se-young's house. They take the gang members' bodies to the hospital. Choi arrives and is shocked to see all his subordinates, including Yum, have been defeated. Meanwhile, the police question Se-young on the rooftop, asking for his ID. He claims he doesn't have one, stating he's still underage. He says he attended middle school, but dropped out during his second year. He doesn't explain why, as that past still troubles him. The officer calls his superior and informs him about Se-young. Hearing that Se-young is involved, the superior orders the officer to leave the building immediately. He warns against arresting a minor who was a national focus 3 years ago. Arresting him would cause a media frenzy, blaming the police for allowing gang members to invade Se-young's property. With no other choice, the police offer to leave, telling Se-young to avoid further trouble. Se-young, realizing he went too far, calls his aunt. "I want to stay with you in the United States," he says. Before she can tell her uncle, he stops her. "Don't tell him yet. I'm not coming just yet. I have unfinished business." He explains, "I want to travel the country for a year first." His aunt replies, "You should focus on studying. You're about to be an adult who hasn't finished middle school." Se-young begs, "Please let me do this. I promise to be a good boy once my mission is done." After her silent approval, Se-young says, "Don't worry about me," and hangs up. On the other hand, Jun-hyuk calls Chong-soo. "You're a total loser for not kidnapping Se-young yet," he shouts. Chong-soo gets mad. He doesn't want to be called a loser and wonders how to fix his mistake, letting his uncle Choi do the dirty work. Soo-hyun's manager calls Chong-soo. "Soo-hyun wants to meet you and wants all the information about Se-young." Once Chong-soo delivers the information, Soo-hyun tells Suho, another assailant, send the pictures to Rio High. Task him with finding Se-young. Soo-hyun questions, is it safe to leave this to the Japanese mafia? Soo-hyun assures her, they're pros. They never leave traces. We won't have to run back to the United States if we're caught. Soo-hyun moves on. What did Jun-hyuk mean about playing with Se-young first? Hesitant, Chong-soo lies, "I'm not sure." Soo-hyun doesn't trust his lies. Suho gets news. The Yakuza team is on their way to Se-young's house. They'll bring him back in under an hour. This news brings an evil smile to Soo-hyun's face. He can't wait to torture his old victim again. The Yakuza team, 2 guys, arrives at Se-young's apartment building and heads to the rooftop. Their information said he was just an 18-year-old shut-in. Seeing the blood-stained roof, they realize their target isn't normal. They can't take things lightly. Cheap Saitama prepares to enter the rooftop room to deal with Se-young himself. Alibaba Express Yujiro, the ogre, stops him. "I'm stronger than Saitama," he claims. Being a beast himself, Yujiro senses a violent beast inside the rooftop room. "Be careful," Yujiro warns Saitama. Accordingly, Saitama puts his guard up. But then, Se-young comes out of nowhere. He smashes Saitama's face so hard with one punch, rendering him unconscious instantly. The ogre realizes that he cannot allow Se-young to move. He attacks him immediately from behind. Se-young doesn't even care and takes the punch head-on. He shows him that the Japanese anime guys are no longer on the list of being the strongest anymore. He retaliates with a punch to Yujiro's face. He smashes his face into a pulp with one go, making it crystal clear that he cannot be messed with. Saitama gets up, beaten over the fact that his friend was beaten just like that. However, Se-young doesn't let him do anything about it, and once again knocks him out with another deadly blow. Soo-hyun is still waiting for Saitama and Yujiro to come back with Se-young. He asks their leader, Takashi, why they haven't come back yet, even though the time has passed an hour already. Takashi, with a confident smile on his face, tells Soo-hyun not to worry. He claims that his 2 subordinates are pros among the pros who have no record of failing before. But his smile quickly fades away as he receives a direct call from Se-young, who demands his location. He is told that if he doesn't give his location to him, he will murder both Yujiro and Saitama. Acknowledging the threat, Takashi immediately ends the call. He realizes that if a guy can beat Yujiro, he can beat any one of them. But Se-young still manages to get Takashi's location from Saitama, who basically escorts him to the location, as he is scared to death. Se-young, who clearly cannot fit inside a car, rips off the roof of the car. He sits inside and only then heads to Takashi's location. This time, he is having the war's word with him, indicating that he won't be sparing anyone. Takashi, in the meantime, tells Soo-hyun and his friends to leave the place for their own safety. He reveals to them that they have completely failed the mission. However, Soo-hyun doesn't cooperate, as he doesn't think anything is dangerous about staying here. Unsurprisingly, he is acting like a brat who doesn't know that people around him do things for their own good. The fact that Takashi has failed to bring the shut-in middle schooler to them makes Soo-hyun furious. So he starts shouting at Takashi, which ends up wasting enough time for Se-young to arrive there just in time. He tells Saitama to lead the way to the 8th floor, where Soo-hyun and 3 other assailants currently are. He starts walking towards there. The pedestrians there, who are completely overwhelmed by the sheer, gladiator-like appearance of Se-young, assume that someone must be shooting a movie, since he is also carrying quite a long sword. They begin to film Se-young. The intention is to post it on social media, hoping it will go viral. But then, they notice Yujiro inside the car Se-young arrived in. Yujiro's face is disfigured. They realize this young man is terrifying, dangerous, and strong. He could potentially bring harm to them. Takashi finally makes Soo-hyun understand that they must evacuate before the enemy arrives. He tells him there are 3 stairways to escape the building, maximizing their chances of survival. Soo-hyun suggests they split up. However, the guy with green hair thinks staying together is better. He is sure Takashi can save them if they encounter their enemy. Soo-hyun disagrees. He explains why splitting up is the better option. He says that if even one of them escapes and calls their people or the police, it guarantees a 100% chance of survival. I mean, you could just use a cell phone to call them here. Soo-young decides to go with Soo-hyun, seeing him as her only protector. Soo-hyun tells Suho and Chang-soo to take the other 2 stairways, and tells Takashi to come with him and Soo-young. Chang-soo runs, cursing Soo-hyun for not staying together. He runs into a black figure in the stairway. Meanwhile, Soo-hyun makes sure Takashi has a gun. He tells him not to hesitate to use it if the enemy appears. But when they reach the exit, they find the police, not Se-young. The police arrest them. On the other side, Se-young reveals himself to be the black figure. He successfully captures Chang-soo, who doesn't recognize him. He also sees that Saitama's skull is completely deformed from Se-young's punches. He realizes Se-young is a monster. Speaking of this guy, Se-young's heart is filled with rage. He can't believe the guys who destroyed his life, and his parents don't even recognize him. The police surround them. They have received an anonymous tip that a man has taken Chang-soo hostage. One of the officers uses a megaphone. He tells Se-young that whoever he is, he should release Chang-soo. He asks Se-young why he is doing this. Chang-soo asks Se-young the same question. This time, Se-young is totally infuriated by the guy's insolence. Se-young reveals he is the guy they bullied in middle school. The guy they beat up every day until he died 3 years ago. Chang-soo doesn't believe that the frail, weak, introverted loser is this bulky Superman with a long sword. 2 police helicopters close in on Se-young. After identifying him, they tell the head officer of the rescue mission about him. The witnesses were confused by Se-young's answer. "Why are you doing this?" they asked again. Se-young reminded them about the incident with his parents. They sacrificed themselves by burning to death, all for justice. However, no justice came for the 8 attackers, who deserved much worse than death. Therefore, Se-young took it upon himself to bring justice. He brought out his long sword and put it on Chang-soo's neck. He made him beg for his life, while keeping the heavy sword pressed against his neck. Se-young continued to tell his story to the world. He said he would make every bystander feel what his parents felt when nobody helped them. Standing there, in front of the world, Se-young took an oath to make everyone pay with their lives. His message was sent to everyone in South Korea. Instead of being concerned about the hostage situation, people focused on how a middle schooler had become so strong and tall. The emergency broadcast brought attention to many people who began to investigate the case. Apparently, Chang-soo is the son of the president of Aegis Security, the top security squad. This meant that the entire country could be in danger if Chang-soo was hurt, as his father was a very influential man. But what was more dangerous was Se-young, who clearly wasn't playing games. An officer asked if he was up for negotiations. Upon learning that Se-young was only there to make a statement and had no other demands, they decided to hear what he had to say. Se-young announced to the world that he would end the lives of his 8 bullies: Soo-hyun, Soo-young, Jun-hyuk, Eugene, Suho, Dahoon, Heewon, and Chang-soo. He would also end the lives of their influential parents and their entire families, who helped them escape punishment by the law. He was so confident that he stated even if the country issued military action to protect those 8 attackers, he would break through everything. He had become death itself, making it clear that no one could stop him from achieving his goal. Se-young asked Chong-su if he had any last words. Chong-su replied that if he tried to hurt him any further, his dad would find him and torture him so much that he would beg for death. Se-young couldn't believe that this brat was so full of himself, even at his death. Then he lifted his sword and brought it down on Chang-su's neck in one fell swoop. Chang-su's head falls from the building and onto the shocked onlookers below. A camera quickly focuses on the head, with the stunned reporters shaking in terror and disbelief. After a few seconds of shock, the first piercing scream reverberates throughout the city. Meanwhile, Se-young just calmly stabs his sword into the floor and stares outward. In his office, Chang-su's father, Kim Sang-pel, is watching the news with horror. Upon seeing the death of his son, he slams the iPad down onto his desk and slams his fist into it. He promises to bring vengeance for his son, while tears fall down his cheeks. In another office, the 21st president of South Korea and Soo-jung's father is also shaking in anger at what he's watching. He calmly dials his phone and calls the police commissioner. When he learned from the commissioner that the execution had just truly occurred, he angrily berated the police for not shooting and murdering Se-young yet. Back in the city, the police negotiator is still thinking about what he should do next when he hears the orders to shoot and murder Se-young. This surprises him, but the sniper teams surrounding the area had already gotten in position. SWAT teams also assembled beside him, with their rifles trained on Se-young. Se-young was about to address them again when a shot suddenly hit his face. Everyone was surprised again, while the sniper team reported their success. However, it turns out that Se-young managed to block the bullet with his sword at the very last second. The order to shoot was given again, and despite the police negotiator disagreeing with the idea, he orders the SWAT team to fire. The police unload their rifles at the building, filling every available space with lethality. But Se-young was moving like a blur, and the negotiator could only watch as Se-young jumped high into the air and away from the site. As he was falling, Se-young then sticks his sword onto another building and stops his momentum. The police trucks quickly followed him onto the new location, but Se-young was just calmly waiting for them. He then warns them that everyone getting in the way of his revenge will also die. As the trucks drive towards him, Se-young pulls back his arm and throws his sword in one powerful swing. The sword cuts the first truck in half, while impaling itself on the second one right behind it. The impaled truck was blown back into the air, but Se-young was already running after it. He then jumps, pulls his sword out from the vehicle, and swings it again in one motion. Another truck gets immediately sliced in half and explodes violently. The police negotiator shields his face from the blast, but his whole body quivers when he sees something step out of the flames. It was Se-young, unaffected by the heat and glaring right towards them. The police negotiator has no idea what to think anymore. How could someone survive that? Is Se-young still even a human? Se-young is still walking towards them, so the police negotiator has no choice but to grit his teeth. He orders his men to shoot. Se-young leaped up from the hail of bullets so fast that it seemed he disappeared. They all look around, but Se-young suddenly lands behind them. He crushes two policemen under his sword. The police turn around and aim their rifles at Se-young, while the police negotiator orders the snipers to take the shot. The snipers aim precisely at Se-young's head for a quick takedown and fire the bullet. The bullet travels quickly, faster than anyone can even comprehend. And yet, Se-young looks towards the bullet coming straight for him and places his sword on its path. The bullet gets cut in half, striking uselessly on the floor. The police negotiator shouts to everyone to do everything they can to stop him. Every policeman there knows that they are battling an uncontrollable monster. They know how much destruction he has caused and their impending deaths. So when Se-young starts a move, they can only scream and fire their shaking guns. Se-young runs towards the firing policemen, dodging their shots. He then swings his sword at the group, blowing everyone away. Se-young's easy and callous destruction is all caught on camera by the news crew, still reporting on the scene. However, this scary situation is now too much for them, and they immediately run away, throwing away everything that slows them down. The camera, now abandoned, lands on the street, but still broadcasting each and every murder Se-young makes. In another room somewhere in the city, Soo-hyun is shaking in fear at the TV beside him. Soo-young is already curled up with a blanket, terrorized and traumatized. Se-young's words keep repeating in their minds, and how he promised he will hunt each and every one of them. Meanwhile, back in Se-young's location, a few minutes have passed. Firefighters have appeared to quell the raging inferno from the destroyed vehicles, while emergency responders give first aid to the injured police. A few meters away, the police negotiator and team leader slams his subordinate onto the wall. He demands to know what his subordinate and Se-young talked about earlier. After Se-young decimated the police force, this subordinate was the only one left conscious. The subordinate reveals to his superior that Se-young just asked him for the location of the other kids that got out. Due to his fear, the subordinate had no choice but to tell him that the kids were evacuated to the nearby Shinjin University Hospital. The team leader couldn't believe his subordinate's cohorts, and he punches him in the face. Afterward, he quickly tells their headquarters that Se-young is headed towards the hospital. In the hospital, Soo-hyun and Soo-jang are still in their room. Paralyzed by fear, they don't know that outside their window, Se-young is already watching them from afar. Inside Soo-jang's room, the two friends watch the news. The report says Se-young has escaped from the crime scene, and his location is unknown. This news sends a jolt of fear through them. Soo-hyun feels powerless compared to Se-young, and he curses at their situation. Suddenly, their hospital room door opens. A cold-looking woman comes in, followed by more and more men in black suits. Soo-hyun asks who they are. The woman explains that they are from the Presidential Secret Service. A couple of men carry Soo-young. Another advises Soo-hyun to follow them. They quickly leave the room. Se-young, still watching from outside, sees him leaving. He steps down from the rooftop. Meanwhile, the team leader's warning about Se-young's next target finally reaches the Secret Service's ears. They now know that Se-young is coming for them. An agent signals for them to stop walking. All of a sudden, Se-young comes crashing in from outside the window. He even manages to glare at them while hurling through the air. Then he crashes into the opposite wall, sending stone and glass everywhere. Se-young had jumped from all the way down at the front entrance to the top floor corridor. The Secret Service readies themselves, watching the hole Se-young just made. Se-young starts climbing out of it. The agents' jaws drop, and they shake in fear. Despite being the best in their field, Se-young towers over them like a god. Se-young even looks past them, directly at his targets, Soo-hyun and Soo-jang. Soo-jang stumbles back in fear. The woman from the Secret Service grabs his jacket and pulls him back the way they came from. With her is another agent carrying Soo-hyun. She wants to lead them to the elevators on the other side of the building. Meanwhile, every other secret agent stays behind and blocks Se-young's way. Se-young doesn't know why they are running. His memories flash back to how his own parents, despite immense pressure from the bullies' parents, never gave up. They stood firm for his sake and didn't choose to run. He screams at Soo-hyun. The woman orders the other agents to shoot Se-young. The agents pull out their guns, but Se-young's fists are faster. Their skulls cave in from Se-young's punches, and one is even sent out of the window. The other agents manage to aim their guns and start shooting. Meanwhile, the woman slams her hand on the elevator buttons, hoping it moves faster. They can hear their comrades dying just down the corridor. Before the elevator doors close, a wounded agent stumbles into their sight, begging for help. His jaw is broken and hanging, the result of Se-young's punch. His hand reaches out. Suddenly, the wounded agent is pierced by a huge sword. The traumatic scene renders everyone in the elevator speechless. Are they still fighting a human being? Soo-hyun notices the elevator going down. Why are we going up towards a helicopter? He asks the agents. Before anyone can answer, the whole elevator shakes violently, as if someone dropped them. They look up, wondering what could have happened. Standing on the elevator's roof is Se-young, readying to plunge his sword down. The woman agent quickly realizes Se-young must be on top of them. "Duck," she yells. Just a few seconds later, the sword pierces through the ceiling and towards them. Thankfully, no one is hit. "Run," she tells everyone the moment the elevator doors open at the first floor. Meanwhile, Se-young pulls out his sword and pierces it through the ceiling again and again. When the elevator finally stops at the first floor, Soo-hyun quickly runs out, screaming. The others follow after. But, as the last agent, carrying Soo-young, stands ready to run, the sword pierces him in the shoulder. With his last strength, the agent throws Soo-young away from the elevator. A second later, the ceiling gives way and crushes the agent. The female agent helps Soo-young stand up, and they try to hobble away from the destroyed elevator. They haven't gotten a few meters when Se-young walks out, angrier than ever. "Where do you think you're going?" he asks his two former bullies. A Humvee then crashes into the building's glass walls and drives through it, crashing into Se-young. Se-young parries it with his sword, but the Humvee manages to fling him away into the opposite wall. The driver of the Humvee steps out, and Soo-hyun recognizes him as Tae-cheong, a member of their company, Shinjin Group, and one of his father's subordinates. Get inside the vehicle, Yang tells him, but Se-young recovers quickly. Before they can all leave, Yang orders them to go ahead. When his driver doesn't want to leave, he yells at him to leave. As the Humvee drives away, Se-young starts walking after it. Yang shouts after him. He pulls out a gun and starts shooting at Se-young, which finally catches his attention. Yang pulls out a knife with his other hand and warns Se-young that if he's after the kids, he first has to go through him. Before he can even finish his sentence, Se-young is already punching him into the wall outside the hospital. The Humvee is already driving far away with its escorts. They look in the rearview mirror and are relieved when they don't see Se-young anywhere. The female agent gets instructions to head toward Yangdong Bridge. It is their nearest secure path. The female agent tells the driver, but Yang's driver argues, "We have our own secure ways." Their argument stops when something explodes behind them. Se-young is once again in the air, pursuing them. Se-young finds the convoy on the bridge. He spots the Humvee. He directs his momentum toward it. He lands perfectly on top, crushing the vehicle beneath him. However, it was a decoy Humvee. Soo-hyun and the agent look behind them and see Se-young. They are almost through the bridge. They just need to delay Se-young a little longer. The female agent asks Yang's driver, "Do anything, we need to stop Se-young." The back door of one of their escort vehicles opens. Another person aims a weapon at Se-young. The female agent cannot believe what she sees. Soo-jung's father's company, the Shinjin Group, who rescued them, has access to grenade launchers. How can a civilian company have access to military-grade weapons? The grenade launcher fires at Se-young. It swallows him in a fiery explosion. Soo-hyun smiles. Se-young shouldn't be able to survive a direct hit. However, Se-young suddenly drops from above. He lands on the hood of their Humvee. Soo-jin screams in fear upon seeing him. Se-young just cleaves through the vehicle's roof, exposing all of them. He lifts his sword once more. He is about to bring it down on them when the female agent orders the driver to brake. The vehicle quickly stops. Se-young gets flung ahead. Se-young stabs his sword into the ground and stops himself. Everyone stares at each other. Se-young hears noise from behind. Looking back, Se-young realizes that they are very near the edge of the bridge where military forces have gathered. They are shooting smoke grenades at them. The grenade explodes, filling the whole bridge with concealing smoke in just a few seconds. The soldiers prepare to fire the moment Se-young appears. However, Se-young instead jumps high into the air. He grabs hold of the bridge's steel beams. He hangs there upside down like a bat while glaring at his new enemies. The military quickly adjusts their aim and shoots at the boy. Se-young jumps right through their bullets and crash lands into their midst. Some of them are flung from the impact. Se-young then speaks to the others. "Leave if you value your lives." The soldier curses at him and starts firing once more. Meanwhile, a helicopter lands in the middle of the bridge. Soo-gun, the female agent, and Soo-jin move to the waiting helicopter. Behind them, the policemen are being flung into the air like ants before Se-young's mighty swings. He spots his target getting into the helicopter and pulls back his sword to throw it. However, he stops at the very last second. He doesn't want his bullies to die that way. Thus, he lets them fly into safety. Soo-hyun wipes away his tears and sweat from the terrifying chase. Meanwhile, the female agent puts her arms around the still frightened Soo-young. Down below, on the bridge, Se-young quietly advises them to wait. "Let despair fill their hearts," he says, "until I find them again." In the president's residence in South Korea, nicknamed the Blue House, high-ranking officials are watching footage from the battle. The only sound heard in the room are screams of terror from the policemen dying in battle. After the video ends, a speaker explains the situation. The suspect's name is Tak Se-young, an 18-year-old boy. His last known location is the bridge, and we are currently investigating everything about him. Aside from that, we've also connected Se-young's incidents 3 years ago, when he was a teen violence victim. Se-young's parents then self-immolated in front of a camera to get media attention for their son's case. A military man speaks out. "Do we have any idea where Se-young might be headed next?" he asked the presenter. When the presenter couldn't answer, the man also asked, "Where could the president be right now?" It doesn't make sense that the president and one of the target's fathers are absent during our discussion. The presenter explains that the president is independently searching for a solution for their current crisis. In another building, at the headquarters of the Bluing Media Corp, another meeting is taking place. The attendees of these meetings are also watching Se-young's threat against all his former bullies, their parents, and their families. The participants of this meeting are the influential parents Se-young just threatened. This includes the chairman of Shinjin Group and Soo-jung's father, Joyoung, South Korea's president, and Soo-hyun's father, Sun-cheol, the chairman of Bluing Media, and Jun-hyuk's mother, Young-suk, the top search engine company Goodfield's chairman, and Yujin's father, Jung-gu, the vice minister of revenue, Ji-hyung, who's Hee-won's father, and the savings and loans company owner and father of Dean Han-soo. The only one absent from their group is the president of the security agency company and the dead Chango's father, Sang-pel. Their first order of business is to block everything related to the video so that it won't show up on the internet. For these, Bluing Media and Goodfield is in charge. Unfortunately, these two conglomerates wouldn't be able to block social media outside their control, so news will leak out sooner or later. What's most important is that they need to catch or eliminate Se-young, or else the situation won't stabilize. Unfortunately, their enemy doesn't even flinch in front of guns, and rumors say he can even dodge bullets. Joyeon points out, if Se-young is bulletproof, then he wouldn't waste effort dodging or running for bullets. They already gave up on the police's help, so they decided to utilize the mercs and the military. After all, they're not only fighting for their children's lives, but their own. If Se-young isn't stopped, who among them will be the first to die by Se-young's sword? As for Se-young, he is currently in Gongo Memorial Gardens, carrying a small bag. Upon seeing him and recognizing him, the janitor tries to call the cops while shaking in terror. Meanwhile, Se-young just heads to a particular grave and kneels in front of it. He greets his parents and apologizes for not visiting them first. His tears start to fall as he sobs out how much he misses them. He caresses the tombstone and assures them that he fully understands what he's doing. All you have to do is relax and watch me from heaven without worries. Police cars and SWAT trucks start congregating in the cemetery. Se-young pays them no mind and just promises his parents that he won't forgive a single one of his bullies. I won't let them know despair or pain. Since they in the country didn't listen to my parents, then I won't listen to them or the country too. He wants the parents of his bullies to feel the pain of losing their children, just as he endured the pain of losing his own parents. And so, he wants to lead the son they love right into the cemetery with them. He lays out the items in his bag, which includes his old notebooks, shoes, caps, and other knickknacks. Nearby, the police team leader shouts from megaphone, "We have already surrounded you, and ask you to surrender peacefully." However, Se-young also wants them to know pain, just like how they ignored his parents. I will let the country know how it feels when no one hears them crying out for help. Se-young wipes away his tears and promises to punish everyone who has sinned against him. Military copters start appearing over the cemetery. The police team leader warns Se-young that if he doesn't surrender, the copters will start firing. Se-young looks left, right, and up to see the various forces arrayed against him. When he still doesn't do anything, the helicopter's pilot decides to fire. Its rotary cannon starts spinning, and a barrage of bullets rain on Se-young. Se-young uses his sword to shield his body while the bullets destroy everything around him, kicking up a loud cloud of dust in the process. The gun's red-hot barrel stops shooting as they wait for Se-young's response. The team leader continues yelling at Se-young to drop his sword. His eyes widen when he abruptly sees the sword thrown into the air, and it skewers the helicopter. Se-young is questioning, "How dare they shoot in the place where my parents are resting?" The damaged helicopter comes crashing down, lazily, right into the military truck's position. Everyone shields their eyes from the ensuing explosions. The team leader sees the burning, mangled bodies of his subordinates. Something fires from behind Se-young. The projectile explodes immediately upon hitting Se-young. The team leader wonders what's happening. To his surprise, a column of tanks is now positioned just outside the cemetery. However, Se-young survived the tank cannon, with just a shirt ripped from the explosion. He immediately leaps towards where the helicopter crashed and retrieves his sword. A military person surges forward, without waiting for the team leader's orders. Meanwhile, Se-young casually puts the sword between his teeth. He readies himself on all fours, as if he's in a wolf position. The team leader orders everyone to fire. Se-young rushes toward them in short, powerful leaps. Se-young jumps from person to person, slashing at each soldier he passes through. In the blink of an eye, every armed soldier around the team leader is now on the ground, holding their spilled guts in. In the distance, the battalion commander is also watching the battle with fear in his eyes. A soldier approaches him and hands him a phone. When the commander answers, it's from headquarters. They're ordering him to capture Se-young alive by any means necessary. If they're successful, Se-young will become an important asset to their country. The battalion commander watches Se-young's continuing rampage. He tries to explain to his superiors that capturing him isn't feasible. After all, Se-young even managed to survive a tank cannon. However, HQ tells him to stop shelling, because Se-young must not be murdered. Meanwhile, Se-young dodges another one of the tank shells and proceeds to leap into the tank. He brings his sword down, destroying it. The battalion commander can only stare at his phone, wondering how the hell he can capture Se-young alive. Meanwhile, Aegis Security is also amassing their own army. A convoy of cars is escorting a truck full of guns and weapons. Some of them are apprehensive about using such overwhelming force, but their leader points out their president just witnessed his son being decapitated. Everyone would go crazy after seeing that. The mercs are still apprehensive, since they're going to cause a huge mess. His leader just smiles at him. He then reveals that all of Aegis mercenaries and security teams, all over the world, have had their contracts canceled and are being ordered back to Korea. It looks like the Aegis president, Sang-pil, is going to wage war inside the city. At the military headquarters, everyone is quiet. They listen as their soldiers failed to capture Se-young. In fact, he soon escaped their perimeter. Another officer reports that they suffered significant casualties from the engagement, and the remaining soldiers are requesting reinforcement. The general orders the battalion commander to return to HQ. He wants to hear their reports directly. A regiment of his soldiers had just fought against a lone civilian in a rogue operation. In the end, they got crushed and the tank division annihilated. He wants to know who ordered them and why. Back in the cemetery, Se-young is walking away from the smoldering wreckage of his battle. He suddenly stops when he sees a peculiar sight nearby. It was a happy family enjoying the sun. Se-young's face immediately saddens, but slowly morphs into one of resolve. He still has a mission to continue. Meanwhile, Su-young is in his own hideout, thinking of his future. He wonders if Chong-su gave up his name and revealed to Se-young that Jun-hyuk was the one who told Chong-su to go after Se-young. If Chong-su did reveal it, then he is very likely Se-young's next target. He then notices that his phone is ringing, and when he answers it, it was Eugene on the other end. Eugene explains that she called because she is worried about him. After all, he was the one who ordered Chong-su. Su-young was surprised that she knew about that, but Eugene explains that Chong-su told her. The stress is getting to Su-young, and he doesn't care anymore. Eugene can even tell Chang-su's dad that he is the one at fault. Eugene tries to calm him down and explains that she might have an idea on how to stop Se-young. She asks Su-young to remember the days when they were still bullying Se-young. Su-young tries to recall those memories, and a smile slowly appears on his lips. They remembered how Se-young volunteered to take all the bullying just to save another person. They just have to get to this person again. It was late at night and deep in the woods. Se-young was resting underneath a tree. His ears quiver upon hearing strange noises around him. Black Ops unit wearing night vision goggles slowly surrounds him. They are mercenaries of the Aegis Company, and they quickly report to the Aegis leader that they spotted Se-young. The Aegis leader smiles and orders all other teams to converge on Se-young's position. When everyone is ready, the Aegis leader orders them to fire. The peaceful night sky is immediately replaced by a fiery explosion. Afterward, staccato of gunfire fills the forest as they shoot at Se-young's location. After emptying their clips, they smile at the carnage they created in Se-young's demise. Unfortunately, Se-young is, in fact, behind them already and is slicing one of them in half. The Aegis leader could only listen as his men were picked off, one by one. His laptop filled with videos of their failed operation. A few seconds later, an explosion nearby redirected his eyes. Se-young had jumped from the forest onto the highway where the leader was. Se-young tackled his car, sending it flying into the highway's edge and down the cliff. Back in the city, the news continued to break the story of Se-young's murder spree. The police assured citizens they would not rest until Se-young was behind bars. Meanwhile, experts were interviewed day in and day out to share their opinions. A youth counselor shared how Se-young losing his parents at such a young age surely had a psychological effect on him. Another psychologist suggested that Se-young had become a psychopath, with his mind degrading due to extreme trauma, nurturing his psychosis. Nevertheless, they all agreed that Se-young should surrender. Since murder is evil, he should have sought a legal remedy against his bullies. Others called for an expansion in the police force so they could counteract further violence. Se-young's story was also going viral on the internet. The beheading video already had millions of views, and comments were debating on all sides. Some laughed at how scared the 7 bullies must be, while others idolized Se-young. The police investigations division was also working overtime, collecting everything they could about Se-young. They had already recovered Se-young's items from his residence and were currently analyzing them. Another team was interviewing the renters in his building. As for Se-young's internet activities, one detective told the others that there were basically none. Unlike other teenagers who usually scroll through social media and blogs, Se-young had no virtual presence at all for the past 3 years. The detectives also heard about Se-young's visit to the memorial garden, but they failed to gather information there. All the people they dispatched to the scene went silent. They tried talking to the team guarding the area, but they were just told off. It turned out that the military themselves were investigating the soldiers and the policemen who fought Se-young there. The lead investigator slammed his hand on their board in frustration. He didn't understand why the military was trying to muscle in on police business when the criminal was just one person. There's no terrorist organization behind him or anything that affects national security. All of a sudden, every one of the detectives' phones started ringing. They all answered their phones, and news came rushing in. The detectives assigned to guard the kids Se-young is targeting were being dismissed. The lead detective could only curse in frustration. This news just piled onto his ever-growing pile of problems. In the government's intelligence agency, a subordinate reported to their boss. They had finally confirmed Go Hyunjin's address in the USA. Hyunjin is Se-young's maternal aunt, who studied abroad in the US and stayed there after marrying an American. The boss ordered his subordinate to contact the Korean embassy in the USA. They wanted to contact Hyunjin, be kind to her, but at the same time, apply pressure. In summary, their goal was to get Hyunjin to return to Korea on her own. But if that failed, the government was prepared for any developments in Los Angeles. Se-young's aunt, Hyunjin, was surprised when someone knocked on her door, introducing themselves as being from the Korean embassy. When she opened the door to talk to them, the agent tried to forcefully come in. Thankfully, the door chain stopped the agent. Hyunjin fearfully shouted at the agent, while the agent tried to explain that it was about Se-young, who was currently in a lot of trouble. Hyunjin immediately got concerned when she heard about her nephew, and she quickly removed the chain. But when she opened the door, an army of SWAT teams ordered her to freeze as they pointed their guns at her. However, an American agent was leading them, who calmly greeted Hyunjin. Back in Korea, Suho and Soohyun were walking when Suho told Soohyun that Heewon was currently calling them. When Soohyun answered, he asked them how they were. Heewon explained how he had police protection at his house and asked Soohyun if they were safe as well. Soohyun pointed out that unlike Heewon, who only had a bureaucrat as a dad, they owned Shinjin Group, so they were much better protected. In fact, he boasted to Heewon that if Se-young showed up to his location, he'll die. Heewon asked him where he actually was. So Soohyun smirked and boasted that he and Suho were in Yongsun and staying in a U.S. military base there. Heewon complimented Soohyun's safe house, while Soohyun advised him that they were on a phone call for too long already, which might be dangerous. When the call ended, Heewon was already shaking in fear because in reality, Se-young was currently in front of him. Heewon's security detail was already surrounded all around them, and Se-young was just using him to get the other's location. Heewon begged for his forgiveness and pointed out that he was able to get Soohyun's location. Not only that, he also told him that he lied to Se-young only because the richer and much more powerful Soohyun pressured him to do so. He recognized his wrongdoings and begged Se-young for his life. Se-young just stared at him and calmly asked him what they did when he was the one begging them when they were bullying him. When Heewon couldn't answer, Se-young raised his sword and bid him goodbye. Heewon's dying screams echo throughout the building. In the hospital, Yang Yul, more commonly known as Teacher Yang, is covered from head to toe in bandages. Beside him, an old man is listening to a subordinate list out all of Yang's injuries. He suffered fractures all along his spine. His ribcage collapsed. His limbs are dislocated, and he is suffering from extensive internal bleeding. Overall, he is in a very critical state. In addition to that, Yang's younger brother has abandoned the training hall without permission. The old man asks about the Society of Patriots. His subordinate reports they are currently standing down. The old man's phone then rings. It's the Shinjin Group's chairman, Jong, on the other line. Jong apologizes to the old man for Yang's condition, but the old man assures him that Yang chose his own course of action. He then asks Jong what his next moves against Se-young will be. Jong assures the old man that they have already mobilized the military, so Se-young will be neutralized soon. After the call, the old man closes his eyes and recalls an incident in his past that looks eerily similar to today's situation. He also felt the same dread when he faced that enemy from before. The old man opens his eyes and orders his subordinate to summon Jang-il, the master of the Society of Purity. At the Blue House, the police commissioner reports to the president how one of the bullies, Heewon, was found murdered in his home. We are already investigating the scene, but basically, Se-young had murdered 2 divisions of police officers and a detachment of soldiers protecting Heewon. Sung-chul's mind reels upon hearing this statement, and he asks for Se-young's current location. Thankfully, the police are still keeping track of him and have officers in pursuit. Sung-chul thinks for a moment and gives the police new orders. Isolate and take into protective custody Heewon's father, Gi-jung. Then, allow Se-young to go wherever he wants to go. Instead, just block all roads and traffic that might get in Se-young's way. In summary, we won't let Se-young come into contact with anyone, but let him go wherever he wants. The police should also block reporters and confiscate any camera that takes pictures of Se-young. The police commissioner was about to protest against this breach in freedom of speech, but Sung-chul just slams his fist into the table and promises to take full responsibility for any fallout. The presidential inauguration day is in 2 days, so we just have to let no one know until then. We cannot control the internet, but the support of the people is usually obtained through television. It won't affect much if the younger generation on the internet might learn the truth. Back in the streets, Se-young notices that everyone is running away from him. He doesn't have a license, so he cannot drive. When he heads to a nearby bus stop, everyone waiting there flees in fear. The sleepy bus driver immediately snaps awake when he sees Se-young waiting for him at the bus stop. He tries to pass by nonchalantly, but Se-young just grabs the bus and lifts its tires from the ground. He then tells the terrified driver that he plans to get on. Back in the Blue House, President Sung-chul is talking to the Shinjin group chairman, Jong. Surprisingly, Jong already knows about Heewon's death. Sung-chul wonders how this could be when he just ordered an information blackout. Jong also shares that he sent his son, Soo-hyun, into the hotel inside the U.S. military base. Even if Se-young shows up there, he'll be too busy fighting the U.S. Army to hunt down Soo-hyun. Sung-chul realizes that Jong's idea is sound, and he decides to send his daughter, Soo-young, there too. Jong asks him why he doesn't just keep his daughter beside him, but the president explains the upcoming inauguration day. They cannot change the fact that a murderous monster is after them, but they don't have to draw more attention to themselves. In addition to the U.S. military base, Jong also has a helicopter on standby around the clock to get the kids to the airport. From the airport, they can use their private jet to fly overseas. Sung-chul compliments Jong's personality of having backup plans. This is why they're the most influential people in the whole country. Meanwhile, in the city, the bus driver has only one passenger today, Se-young. To add more confusion to his already terrifying day, the police seem to be blocking off all other traffic on their roads. The driver tries to stare at a police officer to catch his attention and ask for help, but the police officer refuses to look his way. He wants to shout at them to save him, but he can only cry in fear. Se-young is also mulling over the police's strange behavior. Are they helping him go to his destination, or are they leading him somewhere with a trap waiting? Se-young decides to just not think about it anymore, since it doesn't matter. His goal is to punish his bullies, and he will just murder anyone who tries to stop him from his goal. Even those who pretended not to know what the bullies did are just as evil, so he should also bring justice to them. Soo-young had also just arrived at the U.S. Army base. With her is the female Agent Nam, who is still tasked with protecting her. Agent Nam actually tried to protest the president's decision since Soo-young is already being protected very much, but the president overruled her. Meanwhile, the police are giving an update on Se-young's location every minute. The leader in charge wonders, where is Se-young actually headed? His subordinates start guessing Se-young's next move, but the team leader tells them, that's not important. All you have to do is wrap up the scene wherever Se-young goes, and keep information from going out. That's what the president ordered for the next 2 days, or you'll all lose your job. All of a sudden, their radio starts filling with surprised voices and shocked shouts. Police officers start yelling out that they have to stop Se-young. So the team leader asks, what's currently happening? The radio tells them, Se-young just casually entered the U.S. Army base. The team leader questions, why would the USA just let a known criminal enter? The officers clear up the confusion and state, Se-young didn't enter normally. He just demolished the wall from the outside and strolled right in. Meanwhile, Se-young walks inside the U.S. Army base and screams out for Lee Soo-hyun. A few minutes earlier, Se-young peacefully steps out of the bus and calls out to the driver. The driver flinches and begs for his life. But Se-young just apologizes to him. He then walks away, leaving the confused driver inside the U.S. Army base. Soo-young is pissed off that Soo-hyun didn't even welcome her when she arrived at the base. A warning then catches their attention as sirens start going off all over the base. Soo-young asks Agent Nam, "What do the sirens mean?" But Agent Nam tells her, "You have nothing to worry about. Just rest inside the base." At Se-young's side of the base, U.S. Army trucks quickly deploy to the scene. Soldiers come pouring out. They order Se-young to put down his sword and put his hands up, but Se-young couldn't understand them. They're all speaking English, while Se-young can only understand Korean. Se-young tries to calmly explain that he's just looking for some people hiding inside the base. He introduces himself and tries to tell them he's looking for kids named Soo-hyun and Soo-ho. Unfortunately, the language barrier proves too much for both parties, and they just end up screaming at each other. When the soldiers don't move, Se-young jumps into the air and punches the ground when he comes crashing back down. In his mind, the U.S. soldiers are just the same as the other police hindering his justice. His huge impact causes debris and smoke to spread all over the crater. The platoon leader scolds his men for just gaping at Se-young. But Se-young's sword suddenly flies away from the debris and lands meters in front of the soldiers. They wait for Se-young to emerge from the smoke. And when he does, he immediately lands on his sword, causing it to slice through the street and across the soldiers' trucks, causing them to explode. A cannon rotates and tries to fire at Se-young, but Se-young was already too close. He easily leaps and slashes the vehicle in two. The soldiers recover from their shock and start shooting at Se-young. Se-young blocks with his sword, then approaches to attack. He slams one soldier into a wall and cleaves another one before jumping back. Se-young then jumps into the air again and lands in another vehicle, sword point first, impaling it. The soldiers watch in terror, while Se-young slowly pulls out the sword, now dripping with blood from the vehicle's occupants. At the CIA headquarters in Langley, USA, the higher-ups in the military are watching Se-young's live battle with their U.S. soldiers in South Korea. They are amazed to see that Se-young's capabilities are much more than what they earlier predicted, based on the videos on YouTube and Korean social media. Another is wondering how such a thing can even be possible. Their elite soldiers were just completely wiped out by a single Asian enemy, all in just 1 minute. If this is true, then the combat android the U.S. government is developing is already rendered obsolete. A research 20 years in the making had just ended. Another agent inquires about a different research they're conducting. They have been designing a power-assisted combat armor, which uses mechanized assistance to the body and provides pharmaceutical injections to enhance performance. Currently, it only enhances their soldiers by 30%, which means it still cannot be compared to Se-young's performance. Now, everyone sits in silence as they think about what move they should next make. A scientist smiles and tells them that he'll be heading to South Korea in the next hour. He also asks the military in the room to order their men to stop attacking Se-young. After all, they cannot damage such a precious sample. Back in the U.S. Army base in Korea, more and more soldiers are pouring out to stop Se-young. He realizes that this battle might take too long, that his targets will escape. Thus, he needs to change tactics. He grabs hold of a nearby damaged military truck and rips off its roof. He then hefts it like a makeshift shield and prepares to attack again. He has to break through before Soo-hyun and the others can escape. However, the soldiers suddenly receive their orders to cease fire. Se-young was surprised, and he gets suspicious when he sees the soldiers back away and line up on the side of the road, as if opening up the way and letting him through. Meanwhile, at the Blue House, President Sung-chul is panicking when he receives the report that Se-young broke into the army base. The police commissioner reports that since their police force was on standby a little distance away to prevent provoking the Americans, they had no time to react to Se-young's actions. The commissioner is trying to explain that he's already contacting the base, but the president just hangs up on him. Meanwhile, Agent Nam receives a call from the president asking about their situation. Agent Nam reports that she and Soo-jang are safely inside the base with Soo-hyun and Soo-ho. President Sung-chul was about to give her new orders when the call suddenly disconnected. Agent Nam checks her phone to see that she has no network connection anymore. She peeks her head out of their safe room and asks a nearby guard for his phone. It also has no signal. Agent Nam wonders if they might be being jammed. That would be possible if there's a tactical exercise the U.S. Army is conducting, but her suspicion meter is alarming, like crazy. At Se-young's location, Se-young is scrutinizing the soldiers around him. He concludes that they haven't completely withdrawn from combat, but they're also not making hostile movements. If so, it doesn't matter anymore, since if they try to stop him again, he'll just murder them all. Back at the base's hotel, Soo-young tells the others that she actually spoke to Eugene before she got there. She tells them that Eugene already has a plan that might be able to stop Se-young in his tracks. Soo-hyun couldn't believe it, but Eugene insisted that the plan would make Se-young come to them and be defeated. Soo-hyun asks her if the plan involves Se-young's aunt, since his father already sent a guy. Soo-young actually also asked Eugene the very same question, but Eugene just laughed at her. She then tries to question Jun-hyuk, since he and Eugene are close, but Jun-hyuk just cursed at her. They're all starting to get annoyed at each other. Soo-hyun asks Soo-ho to get some water, so Soo-ho leaves the room and heads to their car downstairs. Agent Nam also uses this opportunity to interrupt their conversation and tells Soo-young that they should get back to her room. Soo-young tries to protest since she wants to stay near Soo-hyun, but Agent Nam squeezes her shoulder and leans over to whisper her suspicions. Soo-young finally agrees, and they leave the room. However, Soo-young is confused again when they start walking in the opposite direction from their own rooms. She was about to ask Agent Nam where they're going when they suddenly hear a scream from Soo-hyun's room. Agent Nam grabs Soo-jang and quickly shouts at her to run back in the room. Soo-hyun is down on all fours, and his eyes widen when he sees what just broke through his window. His guards rush inside, but they stop in their tracks when they see Se-young holding a bloodied Soo-ho with one hand. Soo-hyun and Se-young stare at each other for a few seconds. Se-young then throws Soo-ho beside Soo-hyun, and Soo-hyun could see that his former friend is already dead. He screams and runs away from Se-young, to the safety of his guards. One person tries to help him up, but the agent immediately gets a sword to his face. The other agents move in front of Soo-hyun and shoot their grenade launchers at Se-young. The shells hit Se-young and fill the room with fire. Back in the city, Shinjin chairman and Soo-hyun's father, Jong, orders his assistant to drive faster. His men outside the base call him and report that communication inside the base is being blacked out. The U.S. Army isn't letting them in either, despite their political connections to Lieutenant Colonel Kessler, the one in charge of the base. In fact, they cannot contact Kessler at all. Back in the base hotel, Soo-hyun runs away for his life. His guards run the other way in the hopes of stopping Se-young. Se-young, however, is unstoppable and knocks out the guards one by one. When Soo-hyun reaches Soo-young's room, he quickly enters. However, she isn't there. He cannot believe that she would betray him and leave without him. Soo-hyun looks behind him, and Se-young is menacingly standing there. There are no more guards on site. When Se-young starts walking towards him, Soo-hyun stumbles back and falls on his butt. When Se-young finally reaches him, he asks Soo-hyun if he understands why he has to do this. 3 years ago, Se-young accidentally bumped into Soo-hyun. Soo-hyun glares at him, but Se-young just smiles and apologizes before walking away. Soo-hyun's piercing glare follows them, and he tells his friend that Se-young pisses him off. Later that afternoon, they start bullying Se-young. Soo-hyun steps on his head and orders him to raise it. When Se-young doesn't, Soo-hyun kicks him in the face. When Soo-hyun asks him if he knows who he is, Se-young lies and replies that he doesn't. The truth is he actually does, because they're classmates. Soo-hyun grabs him by the hair and forcefully lifts him up. He demands to know why Se-young would just bump into him. Se-young has no idea what he's talking about, so Soo-hyun reminds him of the incident back in the hallway. Se-young couldn't believe that such a little thing would become a big problem, but this just pisses Soo-hyun off more. He starts slapping Se-young around. Se-young realizes that Soo-hyun doesn't want an apology. He just wants to hurt him. He shields his head from the incoming pain, but someone suddenly yells out to them to stop. It was Se-young's one and only friend. Back in the present, Soo-hyun stands up to the monstrous Se-young and dares him to murder him. However, reverse psychology doesn't work, since Se-young smiles and tells him that he will gladly do so. Soo-hyun tries to threaten Se-young that his father will murder Se-young's aunt if he dies. He sees that this has an effect on Se-young, so he keeps taunting him. Would Se-young really want another member of his family to die because of him again? Se-young grits his teeth in anger, and his hand shakes. However, a U.S. soldier from outside the building suddenly interrupts their conversation with a megaphone. The U.S. soldier tells Se-young that it was true. There was an incident with his aunt in the U.S. Soo-hyun smiles, since this would mean his dad succeeded, and he continues threatening Se-young. But the soldier isn't finished yet. The soldier explained that the U.S. government protects all of its citizens, including Se-young's aunt, Hyunjin. That is why they have already evacuated her, and she is currently safe under their protection. Soo-hyun's taunting smile slowly vanishes and turns to despair. His father's plan failed, and it ended up just infuriating Se-young. Back in the U.S., the American scientist commends the U.S. soldier for delivering their statement perfectly. He plans to control Se-young by using his family ties in the U.S. The soldier reports back that another one of the evacuees from the hotel is also a target of Se-young, the president's daughter, Soo-young. Currently, the U.S. Army is declining their helicopter entry to evacuate them. They ask for further instructions. The U.S. scientist thinks for a moment. He recognizes that this Soo-young person can be dangerous in more ways than one, so they shouldn't make them suspicious. He orders the men to let the helicopter in and let it take Soo-young anywhere she wants. He will be there in the morning, so he orders them to keep Se-young inside the base until then. After the call, the scientist smiles while thinking of Se-young. It looks like the USA really wants to get a hold of Se-young. Outside the base hotel, the soldiers can hear screams of pain coming from inside. Se-young had just cut off Soo-hyun's left arm, and he is currently writhing on the ground in pain. Se-young wipes away the splatter of blood on his cheeks and brings the sword down again. This time, the sword cuts through Soo-hyun's right leg, severing it. Soo-hyun screams again, but Se-young just calls out to him and smiles. He asks him why he had to threaten his aunt. He was planning to murder Soo-hyun quick and easy, but not anymore. Soo-hyun glares at him through the tears, and his anger can still be felt emanating from him. This makes Se-young smile, since his suspicion was right. Soo-hyun isn't the kind of person to get scared and apologize. That is also why Se-young has a different plan for him. This plan would be a very long, final goodbye between the two of them. Se-young's sword then slowly produces sparks, which quickly become flames, engulfing the whole blade. And this blade is pointed right at Soo-hyun's face. On the internet, videos from outside the U.S. Army base are trending. One can see the plumes of smoke coming from it, and comments are going crazy speculating what could be happening inside. Outside the base, Soo-hyun's father, Jong, finally arrives. He orders the policemen guarding the entrance to move out of his way. When they don't move, Jong reminds them who he is and threatens them, but was already too late. At the base hotel, Soo-hyun's arm reaches out, begging for his dad. His whole body is in flames, and his skin is starting to burn off. Se-young stands watching him, resolutely staring at his suffering. He wants Soo-hyun to know the absolute agony that his parents went through. Back outside the base, the police officer being yelled at by Jong is starting to get depressed. He just got promoted to team leader, but it looks like his career is about to end. Jong continues to threaten to ruin his life if he doesn't move out of the way. The police officer apologizes and tries to explain to the distraught father that their orders came from the top. Thus, they have no choice but to block his way. In response, Jong punches him in the jaw. The other police officers were about to intervene when their team leader stopped them. He points out to Jong that, as a chairman of a company, he should understand his situation. He is a normal guy who cannot go against the company chairman unless he literally has no choice. He urges Jong to talk with his fellow leaders of Korea instead of punching a low-level subordinate like him. Jong finally relents and asks his assistant to get his phone. However, the team leader reminds him that the signal is currently blocked, so they would have to move further away if they want to call their superiors. Jong grits his teeth in frustration. In the Blue House, President Sung-chul is speaking with the commissioner again. The commissioner happily reports that they successfully evacuated Hee-won's father, Vice Minister Gun, to a safe location. After the call, Sung-chul cradles his head and thinks about his daughter. His assistant then arrives and informs him that Agent Nam is calling. Sung-chul quickly answers his phone and demands to know how his daughter is. Agent Nam hands the phone to Soo-young, who reassures her father that she is still alive and all right, but they barely got away in time. Soo-young hands the phone back to Agent Nam, and the president starts asking her what their next move is. Agent Nam shares that they plan to get on a helicopter to evacuate them. She also reveals that, unfortunately, she had to leave behind Soo-hyun and Soo-ho when she was evacuating Soo-young. President Sung-chul immediately realizes that this can be a complication with his fellow parents. Agent Nam continues to explain that they only managed to escape because Se-young was distracted while dealing with Soo-hyun and Soo-ho. She apologizes to the president for using the other two kids as bait. President Sung-chul assures her that she did well, but she shouldn't tell anyone what she just said. If that information gets revealed, Agent Nam would face a lot of trouble. She might not have intended to use the other kids as bait, but if people find out, they may start questioning the morality of their new presidential administration. Agent Nam thanks him for his advice, and they end the call. A few seconds later, S's phone rings again, and this time it was Jong calling. A few kilometers away from the base, Jong asks his assistant if he's sure that Soo-young is with Soo-hyun. His assistant says that he saw Soo-young enter the base with Soo-hyun himself, so they should both be inside. This confuses Jong more, since it looks like Soo-jung's father doesn't even care. He isn't even answering his calls. Outside of the base, the police team leader is praying that no new trouble arises and ruins his day. Unfortunately, his wish isn't meant to be. A police car stops by the barricade, and the driver runs toward the team leader. The officer reports that 2 decapitated bodies were found at Noryeongjin. If this is true, then it looks like Se-young had already left the U.S. Army base. The police head back to their headquarters to regroup and share information. It turns out that last night, 2 officers were murdered and decapitated. The 2 officers were from a different station, but the location they were found in wasn't in their usual patrol route. In fact, the station thought that the police officers abandoned their post until they were found dead hours later. The police team leader asks who found the body, and his subordinate explains that it was from an anonymous call. All they can gather from the evidence is that the victims died around 11 p.m. to 3 a.m. The team leader is infuriated at the U.S. Army personnel. If Se-young had left the base, they should have told them, since now they have no idea where the serial murderer Se-young might be. A new officer then barges into their meeting and reports a new development on the case. A man had turned himself in and admits that he knows something about the murder of the 2 officers last night. The sudden timing just confuses the police team leader more. A day earlier, the U.S. Army soldiers are shocked to see the destruction inside their base hotel. Dead guards litter the floor, and the walls are painted red with blood splatters. They walk forward, but what they encountered disgusts them even more. It was the burnout corpse of a person. One soldier kneels down to inspect the body, but the body suddenly moves. The soldier stumbles back in surprise and screams to the others that the body is still alive. Someone asks if they should call the medic, but their leader rejects the suggestion. They cannot do anything anymore for the soon-to-be-dead person. They should just secure the area and start cleaning up. When they are finished, the body should be truly dead by then. Meanwhile, on the ground, Soo-hyun's burnt-up body starts to cry. Outside the hotel, Se-young is surrounded by U.S. Army soldiers. One soldier steps forward. "Someone from the USA wants to meet with you," he says. Se-young looks around at all the military personnel surrounding him. He jumps high into the air and leaves. "Wait," the soldier yells out to him. "The one who wants to meet with you is the one responsible for saving your Aunt Hyunjin." This catches Se-young's attention, and he crashes back down to the ground. They lead Se-young to a nearby room where he can rest. They explain that the person won't be arriving until tomorrow. "We hope you can rest and relax while you wait. We have already prepared food and new clothing for you too. If you're bored, you can even leave the room and walk around the base." After welcoming Se-young with generous hospitality, the soldiers leave the room. The next day, Se-young finally meets the person in charge from the USA. The scientist introduces himself as Paul and greets Se-young through a translator. "Just say why you want to meet up," Se-young tells him. From his way of speech, Paul hypothesizes that despite Se-young's intimidating appearance, he is still 18. "I am here because of one simple concept, a give and take," Paul tells Se-young. "America has something they want from you." Paul starts telling him that despite Se-young's brash behavior, the American soldiers didn't interfere with his mission. Moreover, they also stopped the Korean government from kidnapping Se-young's Aunt Hyunjin. "The U.S. government is willing to protect your whole family if you would be willing to work with them." A few minutes later, Paul is contemplating the conversation he had with Se-young. He regrets trying to blackmail Se-young and using his aunt in the negotiations. He clearly shouldn't underestimate Se-young based on his age. Se-young, who is currently sitting on the back of their vehicle, glares at Paul. After driving for a while, Paul and Se-young disembark. Paul points to a nearby tunnel. "It will let you escape the base without alerting the Koreans," he explains. Before Se-young can leave, Paul also informs him that the nearest of Song's targets is Dahoon. Aside from him, the nearest other people are Jun-hyuk and Eugene at their homes. However, Unlike the other targets, these two seem to be unconcerned about Se-young. In fact, they even try to lead the safety of their homes. Paul then asks Se-young, "Does the name Xian ring a bell to you?" This makes Se-young pause. Paul continues to explain that their surveillance team overheard Jun-hyuk and Eugene mentioning Xian. Paul's voice falters as he senses the overwhelming aura of death emanating from Se-young. Se-young glares back at Paul. Paul realizes that he might just die right here, right now. Thankfully, Se-young jumps away from the scene. Paul clutches his beating chest in fear. Se-young travels quickly, jumping from one building to the next. His face contorts in anger as he thinks about what he just learned upon hearing about Xian. Meanwhile, at the police headquarters, the police team leader is interrogating the man who surrendered as a witness to the recent police murders. The man is telling a story about Xian, another victim of the bullying 3 years ago, along with Se-young. In fact, the hospital sent out 2 ambulances to respond to the bullying, but the documentations were later changed to only say 1 ambulance was dispatched. The man shakes in terror as he narrates how they were ordered to keep Xian's existence from the public. In another part of the city stands a university mental hospital. In one of their rooms, a young woman is busily doodling on the walls, drawing dead policemen, car crashes, and dead people. The young girl's mind keeps remembering the dead policeman's confession about how they were paid to keep quiet after being threatened with a knife. The policewoman readily admitted that she kept quiet because of the money. She was also even threatened. She then promised the knife wielder that if she lets her go, the policewoman will go back to their police station and confess about everything. Back in the present, the young woman stares at the drawing on her walls of the 2 dead police officers. She then looks at another part of the wall, where a king is surrounded by enemies. She then smiles and calls the drawing Se-young. In the police headquarters, the witness continues to reveal everything he knows to the police team leader. He admits how, when they received the call a few years ago, the victims mentioned included a male and female, but they were then paid off to hide the existence of the female victim. In fact, even Se-young's parents didn't know that there was another victim aside from their son. It wasn't only the responders that were paid off. Xian's family was also compensated to keep their silence. The team leader hypothesizes that Se-young's parents must have rejected the money, and this is why the female victim is unknown, while Se-young became a national sensation. However, the victim corrects him. It turns out that the bully's parents actually didn't offer to buy Se-young's silence. This was because the parents believed they could handle any issue relating to Se-young's parents. The witness cries hard, while telling the police the truth he had kept hidden all this time. Team leader, why are you surrendering now? Witness, the 2 murdered police officers, they were paid off. I'm worried I'm next. I don't want to die. The team leader looked at the witness with disgust. Suddenly, a subordinate entered the room. Subordinate, we have an update about Se-young. She was spotted leaving the U.S. Army base, heading towards Gangnam. The team leader was surprised. Team leader, I thought Se-young left yesterday. If she just left now, then who murdered the officers yesterday? He leaped into action. Team leader, called Jun-hyuk and Eugene. Warn them Se-young is headed their way. He thought hard. Could Se-young have murdered the officers, then gone back to the base? That seemed unlikely. They had lookouts watching the base. His eyes widened. Team leader, another possibility. We have another murderer loose in the city. Eugene lay on her bed, bored. She couldn't go out, still hiding from Se-young. She browsed her phone. Suddenly, she saw something that made her sit up, sweating. It was a live video of Se-young heading toward Gangnam. In another house in Gangnam, Jun-hyuk sighed, annoyed. He felt helpless against Se-young. His phone vibrated. It was Eugene, telling him to check social media. Jun-hyuk was annoyed that Eugene seemed so casual, but he checked anyway. To his horror, he saw why Eugene had told him to go online. It was Se-young, heading right towards them. Even the comments were anticipating who Se-young would target first. Eugene, or him. Jun-hyuk was about to warn his mom, but he saw she already knew. His mom was sitting with detectives around the kitchen table, listening to reports about Se-young's movements. The reports then changed. Se-young seemed to be heading towards Sinsadong. Jun-hyuk's mom and the detectives breathed a sigh of relief. Unlike his mother, Jun-hyuk was horrified. Eugene was in Sinsadong. Jun-hyuk furiously tapped at his phone and called Eugene. When Eugene answered, Jun-hyuk screamed, Se-young is headed your way. But instead of Eugene's voice, he heard the sounds of trashing and violence. Jun-hyuk and the people in his house realize this probably means Se-young has already reached Eugene. Jun-hyuk looks blankly at the sky and stumbles to the door. Where are you going? His mom asks him. Jun-hyuk just replies, I have to get there first. His mom urges him to stay at home, since the military is there protecting them. However, Jun-hyuk tells his mother that if Se-young gets there, nothing can stop him, but he knows a way. He laughs crazily as he announces to everyone that he knows how to stop Se-young in his tracks. Meanwhile, at the police headquarters, the police team leader is slowly piecing all the clues together. He realizes that Shein must have something to do with everything that's currently happening. He asks the witness, what happened to Shein? Where is she now? The witness replies that she's probably dead already. When he first saw Shein after she was bullied, her state was so bad that he actually thought she was already dead. The team leader shouts out to another detective, start looking for Shein. We have to know if she's really dead or alive. At Shinsadong, smoke covers the whole horizon. A soldier shoots Se-young in the head, but the bullet doesn't even wound Se-young. The soldier was about to fire again, but he knows it's futile, so he just drops his hand. Se-young walks away from the carnage, remarking that everyone should have just turned their guns against them, not him. Meanwhile, Jun-hyuk is still pleading with his mom to let him go. He tells her that even though they may be guarded by the police or the army, they cannot do a thing against Se-young. After Eugene, he'll be the next target. So we should leave right now, he exclaims. As for Eugene, Se-young didn't just murder her. He grabs her by the neck and starts squeezing. He demands to know, where is Shein? Eugene gasps out, Shein is at the university mental hospital. Please spare me. However, this just makes Se-young angrier. He tells her that after he woke up from the hospital, he tried everything he could think of to find Shein, but there was nothing. There was no news, no school records, and not even text messages. It was like Shein had never existed in the first place. Se-young was even starting to doubt himself, wondering if Shein even existed in the first place. As he talks, Se-young's hand squeezes tighter on Eugene's neck. Se-young continues to blame the classmates, the teachers, the police, or even the whole country, who hide behind the excuse that they didn't know. Because of all of these complicit people, my parents were driven to the depths of despair, and an ordinary, innocent girl vanished from the face of the earth. But now, Se-young snarls, I'm standing against them. He then punches the almost dead Eugene in the stomach. His punch was so powerful that the wall behind her disintegrates. Se-young drops Eugene to the ground. He stares at her bloody face. At the university mental hospital, Jun-hyuk, along with his guards, rush in to find Shein. The doctors try to ask them where they're going, but Jun-hyuk rudely shoves them out of the way. A nurse asks the doctor if he is okay, but the doctor just laughs and smirks while watching Jun-hyuk and the others. In her room, the young girl is wistfully gazing out the window. A commotion outside her door catches her attention. The door abruptly opens, and Jun-hyuk barges into the room. He smiles upon seeing the young girl and greets her. The young girl, with a scared face, smiles back. They finally found Shein. Outside the room, Jun-hyuk's guards receive another update. It looks like Se-young had also just reached the premises, and he is heading right inside. Jun-hyuk is thinking about what they should do when Shein suddenly starts charging right toward him, catching him by surprise. Meanwhile, Se-young had just entered the mental hospital. He looks up and senses the high number of people there. The guards outside Shein's room are waiting for Se-young to show up when they notice cracks on the floor. Instead of climbing up the stairs like a normal person, Se-young had opted to jump through the ceiling and into the second floor. The soldiers look in horror when Se-young suddenly pops out, but Se-young responds with a glare of his own. When Se-young lands on the ground, he immediately dashes forward towards the guards. The guards could not even react, as Se-young flings them to the walls and slams them with his fists. After knocking out all the guards, Se-young looks around to find Shein's room. However, his eyes widen when he sees blood splattered all over the door's window. He tentatively opens the door, afraid of what he might see. To his surprise, blood fills the whole room, and in the middle of the room is Shein, holding a knife and happily savoring the feeling of blood. On the ground beside her is Jun-hyuk, holding his bleeding throat, and his mom is crying beside him. Tears fall down his mom's cheeks while Jun-hyuk chokes on his own blood. His mom then glares at Se-young and curses them for laying their hands on her son. Her cries fall silent when Shein plunges her knife into the mom's neck, murdering her in one blow. Shein then tells the dead mother that the only people who can say those words are Se-young's parents. She then smiles and greets the shocked Se-young. A few years ago, Shein was a new transferee in Se-young's school. She was ranked first at her old school, so she was expected to perform well in Se-young's school too. One day, Se-young was looking in the trash for his school items that the bullies threw away. When Shein tries to help him look in the trash, Se-young warns her. If the bullies find out that you're helping me, he says, you'll also become an outcast like me. But instead of heeding his warning, Shein replies, I'll just bully you too. I'll pretend to bully you, so the others won't notice I'm actually helping you. Shein's willingness to go through all this just to help him surprises Se-young. His lip trembles as he tries to hold back his tears. Now, these two scared individuals are staring at each other, remembering everything they went through. Another memory surfaces. Shein revealed to Se-young that she just got a confession. Se-young points out, that's natural, since you're smart, pretty, and very popular. If they find out you're talking to me, you might damage your reputation. However, Shein replies, I already rejected the confession. She also reveals that the one who confessed to her is Suho. Se-young knows who Suho is. He's an extremely popular student. He's the son of their school's chairman, and he's a smart student. Shein then replies, I rejected him because they all seem weird. When he confessed, all his friends were there, and they told me that people in the same social class should be with each other. So, they were inviting me to join their group. In another memory, Shein and Se-young are in school when Shein tells Se-young that she plans to hang out with her other friends after school. Se-young tries to beg her not to go, but Shein insists because her friends seem to be already avoiding her. Se-young then reveals, that's because I'm already an outcast ever since you rejected Suho. If you try to meet up with your friends now, they'll just give you an ultimatum. Do what they want, or you'll lose their friendship. And the things they would want you to do are abhorrent. They will make you drink glue, smoke, or steal from a store. Se-young's tear falls as he remembers the early days of being an outcast. The memory then changes to a different day. Se-young is getting beaten up by the bullies when Shein suddenly arrives and shouts at them to stop. This is the last time Se-young had seen her friend alive and well. Now, Shein's face has a scar traveling across it. Se-young's hand gently touches Shein's face, and he falls to his knees in relief. Shein touches his hand, and the two friends bask in each other's presence. After so many years, they are together once again. After Shein had tried to stop him from getting bullied in the past, the bullies just took them to an abandoned building in the school. There, Se-young shakes on the ground while Chong-su scolds him for interfering with their business. They ask him, why did you try to be friends with Shein and steal her from us? Se-young just looks at Shein, who is lying unconscious near him. Eugene yells out, they should just step on Se-young. She asks Se-young, is it true that you are dating Shein? Suho laughs at this news and asks Se-young, is it true? Soo-hyun chimes in. They were actually planning to pay Shein for kissing Suho. They were planning to use Shein, but now Se-young has ruined all of their plans. Soo-hyun towers over him with a creepy smile on his face as they try to make conditions for Shein. Se-young cries and tries to plead with them. He promises, I'll do anything you tell me to do, as long as you don't do anything to Shein. His words just make Soo-hyun smile, and he asks him, why are you being so melodramatic? Are we filming a movie or something? He then looks toward his friends and orders them, strip Se-young of all of his clothes. Se-young was about to beg again about Shein, but Shein surprised them. She had stood up and is now looking out of the city. She then looks back at them with a smile and jumps out of the building. The loud crash echoes throughout the abandoned building as Shein hits the ground hard. The bullies quickly panic about what they should do, while Se-young's eyes are still shocked and looking at where his friend was standing just moments ago. Back in the present, Se-young couldn't help but cry while murmuring Shein's name. Meanwhile, Shein caresses his face and brings her face closer to his. She smiles as she remarks, how much Se-young has changed. I couldn't even recognize Se-young's face anymore. Furthermore, she tells Se-young, you must have a lot of things to ask me, but we should leave the premises for now. The two exited the room, but a contingent of guards had assembled themselves. They shout at the two to freeze. The guards are shaking in terror as they point their guns at Se-young. But the enemy wasn't actually just in front. The doctors and nurses around suddenly stabbed the guards and slit their throats. Se-young was surprised with this shocking turn of events, while the doctor-turned-murderer just orders his men to retreat. As the doctor approaches them, Se-young readies himself for a fight. However, the doctor calls Shein her grace and reports that their mission is successful. Shein congratulates the doctor and then tells Se-young, we should leave. As the military helicopters rush to the hospital, Shein and Se-young ride a SWAT truck away from the premises. Xian notices that Se-young is just quiet, and she knows that he must be curious about all of these new developments. However, she also points out Se-young himself has changed drastically and is now disgustingly big. Her cute friend is now nowhere to be seen. Se-young doesn't respond to Xian's teasings. Xian sits in front of him. She then urges him to ask anything he is curious about, instead of asking about doctors or a SWAT truck. Se-young's first question is whether Xian is hurt anywhere. Xian is touched by Se-young's concern, and she hugs Se-young tight. She apologizes for making him believe that she's dead when she was actually alive all this time. Se-young hugs her back, and the two cry in relief and guilt about each other's circumstances. In the police headquarters, the team leader is still grilling the witness about everything he knows. He wants to know whether it's possible that Xian's parents were the ones who murdered the police officers yesterday. He wants to know if the witness is here because he might be the next target of Xian's parents. The witness replies that, yes, he is scared and doesn't want to die, but more than that, it wasn't Xian's parents that murdered them. Xian's parents are already dead from a car accident a year ago. In addition, Xian's parents weren't good people either. It's actually their fault that everyone had to keep their mouths shut. In the SWAT truck, Xian also tells Se-young everything that happened to her. Their bully's parents offered her parents $10 million as settlement money. Se-young quiets down because this is the same thing that happened to his parents. But then Xian reveals that instead of fighting it like Se-young's parents did, Xian's parents just asked for more money. Instead of $10 million, they asked for $200 million. After a few negotiations, Xian's parents received $120 million from the bully's parents. But that's not even the worst part. The worst part is that after receiving the money, Xian's parents used it to pay off everyone related to Xian and her case. The police, the paramedics, and even the school teachers were persuaded to cover the whole incident up. Her parents wanted to act like she never existed in the first place and just enjoy their new wealth. Se-young's anger rises, and he slams his fist in frustration. The truck swivels on the road from the impact. Xian urges Se-young to calm down. Everything is already in the past, and there's no point getting mad now. She then points out how she's been lying down for over a year while Se-young was in a coma, when his parents fought a lonely battle for her. She had to watch and listen to everything her parents said. She wanted to die when she found out it was all about the money. Se-young asks her where her parents are now. Xian smiles and tells him that they already died in a car accident. Back in her room, the police had already cordoned off the area. But on Xian's wall, there was a drawing of a car getting hit by another car. Se-young and Xian then disembark from the truck and head toward the river. The other doctors ride away on a speedboat. Xian invites Se-young into an empty one before getting on. Se-young asks her, "What happened to your brother?" Xian shares, "My brother is now in the army, just a few months after our parents died." Se-young was about to be angry at her brother for leaving her all alone. But Xian admits the military police actually took him while he was coming home from school. She was then about to explain what's happening to everyone around her. But Se-young stops her. "I don't want to know anymore. I don't even want to know who the people helping you are. Instead, I'll be the one doing it for you." Xian asks him, "Why are you trying to take all the sins alone?" Se-young tells her, "It's not hard for me. I had already decided I would murder all their bullies. Even without a knife, I will murder them all for revenge in your name. That's how we will get our revenge together." Xian smiles and thanks Se-young for his sacrifice. But she also rejects Se-young's offer. "Sure, the bullies are the ones that you have to murder for us to get revenge, but they're not the only ones I am targeting. I want to get revenge on everyone who turned against us, the ones who helped our bullies. I will murder them all, and that will be my revenge." Xian then admits, "Last night, I murdered the police officers that took bribes from our parents." She then apologizes to Se-young. "Since the police might think that you did the murders instead. I was actually planning to disguise myself, but then I saw you in the news. That's why I cut my hair just like yours, because people need to know that we are both on the path of revenge." Se-young remembers everyone he had already murdered in the name of revenge. He understands what Xian is going through, but he doesn't like what his friend has become. Coming at the police headquarters, the witness narrates how Xian's parents approached him. It was the day Se-young emulated themselves on camera. Xian's parents then told us how the whole country is in a state of turmoil about Se-young's bullying. Now that the issue is bigger, money would be easier to extort from the bullies. So Xian's parents offered to work together with us. The team leader couldn't believe what he's hearing. How can parents sell out their own child? The witness rejected Xian's parents since he was afraid of the bullies' parents more. They were such powerful people and everyone was afraid of them, including me. And a few days after that, Xian's parents died in the accident. However, the witness knows that it's not actually an accident. A year ago, on that day, I received a mysterious text warning me that we will be next. The team leader wondered if the bullies' parents had murdered Xian's parents. He texted the witness, but that didn't seem to make sense. Was it really just Se-young who was murdering everyone, or was there a new murder on the loose? Then, another police detective barged into the interrogation room. It was the same person that the team leader assigned to investigate Xian's parents. However, the detective reported that they didn't need to investigate anything. They had just learned that Xian was actually alive. Not only that, they had intel that Se-young was on his way to see her, and both police and army were on their way too. This infuriated the team leader. They were the task force assigned to Se-young's case. So who were the police heading to the crime scene? Why was he learning all of this just now? Meanwhile, in the river, Xian urged Se-young to continue on his revenge, while she would continue on her path too. Se-young was about to offer his services to Xian, but Xian stopped him. She told him that she needed to face her path alone. If they leave evil things alone, they'll just become more evil. If they wait for them to become good, the good things will become evil too. That is why they both have to do their job and get rid of all of them. Their conversation was interrupted when another boat approached them. On top of the boat was an old man with a cross-shaped scar on top of his right eye. The old man greeted Xian and asked, "Are you still trying to convince Se-young?" Meanwhile, Xian waved to the old man and called him Dean. The Dean dropped a ladder onto their speedboat and urged them to climb aboard. When Xian noticed that Se-young wasn't moving, she told him to hurry up. However, the old man recognized that, for Se-young to move, they would have to first convince and move his mind. They couldn't force him, so they might leave Se-young alone for now. Se-young then spoke up and asked the Dean, "Who are you really?" The Dean puffed on his pipe and shook his head. He explained to Se-young that their organization had no name. This angered Se-young, but the Dean explained that all they wanted to do was help lost people like Se-young. Xian asked Se-young if he was really not coming with them, but Se-young was resolute. Just like Xian said earlier, they both had to see the end of their revenge first. The old man's companion smiled and commented, "How kids these days are cool." He then watched as Se-young walked away. As the boat sped along the river, Xian was caressing a gun while contemplating her conversations with Se-young. The old man's acquaintance then spoke up and asked her, why didn't Se-young tag along when he had the chance? Xian didn't answer, since she had no idea who this man was. She had never seen him before, and he didn't even look like one of them. The man walks away and warns her not to think of him like one of their mental hospital patients. Xian points her gun at the man's head and asks, "Did you just call us all crazy?" The man is undisturbed and points out, it isn't sane to teach a kid how to shoot in the first place. Xian was about to justify her actions, but the man speaks up again and warns her, "It's your last chance to put down your gun, or you will die." The way he said it sends shivers down Xian's spine, and she realizes that this man isn't to be trifled with. Thankfully, the tense atmosphere breaks when the old man arrives, informing them that they are near their destination. The old man then explains that they have to secure Su Jing, the president's daughter, before Se-young can murder her. Xian inquires, "Why do we have to save one of her bullies?" The old man explains, "If the murdering continues, the world would turn their back on Se-young, and we have to stop that from happening." Back in the city, the parents of Eugene, Su-hyun, Su-ho, and the others are crying their hearts out. They failed to save their own children. In his car, Su-hyun's father, Chairman Jong, is trying to stop his tears from falling. His assistant then reports to him that Su Jing, the president's daughter, flew out of the military base on the day his son died and is expected to arrive at Ancient Airport tomorrow. This news infuriates Jong. The last time he heard about Su Jing was when she was with his son. The fact that she escaped meant that they left his son to die. Jong curses President Sung Chul's name for abandoning his son. Meanwhile, Se-young had also learned that Su-young is arriving at Inching Airport. He got the information by dangling a member of the Shinjin group on top of a building. Se-young then throws the terrified man back to the rooftop and goes on his way. On the next day, it was time for Sung Chul to take his presidential oath in front of all the National Assembly. Sung Chul raises his right hand and promises to uphold their country's constitution. Meanwhile, in another building in the city, hundreds of soldiers are guarding the entrance. This is one of the hideouts of Dahoon, one of the 8 bullies and one of Se-young's targets. On a nearby rooftop, Xian and her group are watching the soldiers with high-power binoculars. They could see a lot of guards with riot shields down in the streets, and even snipers on the rooftop. Another member approaches them and reports to their captain that everyone is in their place. Sheehan speaks up and warns them to wait for instructions. We have to wait before entering the building because Se-young might get mad if we randomly show up to help. The captain asks Sheehan, is Se-young even coming to Dahoon? Sheehan himself is not sure what's on Se-young's mind. All she knows is that Dahan is one of the 8. Se-young will come sooner or later. The captain remarks, we should be careful when to retreat. It will be dangerous for us if we stay for too long. Sheehan smiles and asks, should we just murder everyone there? The captain looks at her and asks, are you all right? After all, Dahoon is also Sheehan's enemy. He wants to know what Sheehan is really trying to do. Sheehan grins at him and admits, I actually hate the army and police more than my bullies. The cops had an oath to protect, but they don't help poor people like us. Instead, cops are just parasites who want to work for people with high statuses. Would things really change if we murder the 8 bullies? That is why Sheehan can share her revenge with Se-young. They have different targets that will result in a brighter future for all. Meanwhile, Se-young's jumping had brought him to Ancient International Airport, the place where Soo-young will soon land. The whole airport shakes as Se-young lands on the premises with a loud bang. People immediately scream upon seeing him and run away. One citizen accidentally throws his phone at Se-young while running away. It harmlessly bounces off his chest. In the phone screen is President Sung-chul, still giving his presidential oath. Inside the airport, Soo-young is recalling the conversation she had with her father. Her father advised her to move abroad as he wants them to survive. Soo-young didn't want to, but she heeded her father's words and is currently sitting with Agent Nam. They are waiting for their plane to get ready. Soo-young asks Agent Nam, are you going with me? Agent Nam replies, yes, I am Soo-young's bodyguard until I can hand her over to the overseas security team. Agent Nam starts giving Soo-young pointers. She shouldn't log into blogs or social media. Avoid messaging services till she can't be tracked down. She should also not make contact with any neighbors or make friends her age. Agent Nam also explains that she can't stay in one country for more than 1 year due to security concerns. This issue won't be resolved until Se-young is captured. But if he does get captured earlier than expected, then Soo-jang's stay abroad can be shortened. In fact, her life could be back to normal in just 6 months. Meanwhile, the dean is watching Se-young's approach in the airport CCTVs. They have to stop Se-young, but the dean knows he's not someone easily stopped. His attendant reminds him that they have a response manual for this kind of situation. But the dean points out, this manual is for normal opponents. It won't give a solution for their problem. The attendant asks the dean, are we going to use that? But the dean rejects this suggestion. That won't work if we use it more than once. The dean reminds his attendant, we should always assume the worst when it comes to Se-young, or we'll be the ones to die. The dean then asks another agent, how long until Soo-young can leave? The agent reports, it's still 20 minutes for the plane to refuel. The dean warns them, Se-young is approaching. He reminds them, we need to help the president's daughter escape. The dean adds, I have one more trick on my sleeve. He tells his attendant, I'll meet up with Se-young. That way I can drag out the time, even just a little bit. His attendant protests, that would be too dangerous. The dean promises, I won't provoke Se-young. I'm just trying to have a chat. Inside the airport, security approaches Agent Nam. They inform him, Se-young's arrival has been confirmed. Meanwhile, Se-young is casually walking through the airport while people flee everywhere. However, he stops when he notices someone not running away. It was the scared old man, the dean, who was with Sheehan. The dean asks Se-young for a favor. Let Soo-young go for the sake of our country's future that Sheehan is envisioning. The dean explains, we need Soo-young to negotiate with the current government if we want to build the country of our dreams. After all, Soo-young is the only weakness of the current president. However, Se-young just walks past the dean, saying, I cannot stop him. The dean then changes tactics and reveals to Se-young, Sheehan is currently with Dahoon. If Se-young wants, we can even murder him together. He pleads with Se-young, but Se-young shuts his arguments down. I don't care about government negotiations. Furthermore, he warns the dean, don't use Sheehan's name as a shield. If you do it again, I promise to end you painfully. Se-young then walks away, leaving a frightened old man behind. Airport security leads Agent Nam and Soo-young through a different path in the airport. They assure Agent Nam, Se-young has no idea about this route, so we should be safe. Meanwhile, another contingent of soldiers is standing at the ready in the airport. Their commander gives them a pep talk. He warns them, Se-young is the most dangerous terrorist in the country. He even gives them permission to shoot on sight. Every soldier's eyes suddenly widened. Unbeknownst to the commander, Se-young is already standing right behind him. Se-young looks down on the commander and orders him, "Move." The commander stumbles while Se-young just walks past. The commander pulls out his gun and aims it at Se-young. But in a blink, Se-young suddenly turns around and attacks him. The dean is also getting reports from his subordinates. Se-young is currently heading for the runway, looking for Su-young. The dean warns his soldiers about Se-young's extraordinary senses. But his soldier assures the old man, "We will make sure Su-young escapes." As for Se-young, he stopped walking calmly in the airport. Instead, he opted to jump out of the window and onto the runway. From there, he spots Su-young running into an airplane on the other side of the field. Se-young screams at them in anger, catching their attention. Su-young and Agent Nam quickly climb up into the plane. Se-young tries to run across the runway. He realizes that he won't be able to reach Su-young, even if he jumps. The airplane is about to take off when Se-young pulls out his sword and prepares to throw it. In a masterful throw, the sword arcs around the runway and follows the plane as if it's attracted to it. The sword then slices through the upper part of the plane. Inside, Agent Nam covers Su-young while the sword cuts through the cabin. The airplane lists and slowly crashes back down to the ground. Cars appear and immediately surround Se-young. The dean's soldiers jump out and point their guns at Se-young. They know that Se-young now has no weapon, so they barrage him with bullets and grenade launchers. Su-young escapes the downed aircraft while Se-young gets engulfed in a large explosion. Agent Nam tells her that they have to quickly get away. However, a sudden explosion occurs behind them. When they look back, Se-young is now standing on top of the plane, retrieving his sword. Su-young runs away screaming, but Se-young leaps and lands in front of her, blocking their way. The girls cower in fear while Se-young smiles, since he knows he finally cornered his prey. Su-young falls to her knees, since she knows that her time is up. Se-young is looking monstrous as he approaches the two women and utters Su-young's name. SWAT trucks converge on their location, and heavily armed police fill the runway. However, Se-young is already standing right before Su-young. Su-young quietly apologizes. She acknowledges that what she did to both him and Shein is not something that can be forgiven. But she is still asking Se-young for another chance to make up for her mistakes. Her eyes are filled with hope when he hears Se-young saying that she should leave if she wants to live. She was about to thank him when she notices that Se-young is actually talking to Agent Nam. Se-young further warns the agent that he doesn't murder anyone who's not in his way. However, if Agent Nam attacks, he will murder her mercilessly. Agent Nam freezes and is paralyzed with indecision. On the ground, Su-young tries to reach out to her, but Agent Nam just turns around and starts walking away, leaving Su-young alone with Se-young. Su-young screams after her and to anyone who is willing to save her. She reminds them that she's the president's daughter, but not one soldier or police moved. Su-young screams at them, reminding them that they are the police. But Se-young quietly raises his sword. He then powerfully brings it down on Su-young, cleaving her clearly in half. Se-young smiles as the blood splatters on his face. He tells his father, his mother, and Shein that there's only one left. In another country, Japan's Office of the Cabinet is having a meeting. Their topic, how to appease or pressure Se-young. They want to secure the people around him by any means possible. If they cannot get through Se-young, they would also need the next best way to get his power. Everyone knows that the world order would be reorganized based on who controls this power. Some members are skeptical about this, but they are reminded of how guns, and even the army, cannot get past the superhuman Se-young. If they have thousands just like him, the possibilities would be endless. Meanwhile, in an airplane, Paul is also receiving the reports about Se-young. It seems that China has elected a guy named Zhao to lead their task force. Paul knows that it's only a matter of time before the other countries take notice of Se-young. But he wonders why China is putting a wimp to lead their efforts. Paul also learns that Japan is starting to make moves, but Paul just hand-waves them away. The U.S. agent was surprised at Paul's insolent attitude. He reminds Paul how dangerous it is if China or Japan gets to see him first. However, Paul claims that this would never happen. The agent tries to reason with Paul, since reports indicate other countries are prepared to use force if Se-young wasn't persuaded by diplomatic relations. Paul just smiles in response and asks him if he wants to bet on it. He then explains to the agent that once Se-young gets upset at someone, they're already out of the game. Negotiation is also impossible. Se-young has no interest in money or power. The agent suggests that China can actually offer land or autonomy to Se-young. This finally makes Paul pause. He then orders the agent to increase the protection on Se-young's aunt. He even suggests moving Se-young's aunt to Fort Black so that the 82nd Airborne Division can protect her. This surprises the agent, but Paul just creepily smiles. They need to curry favor with Se-young, and if using Se-young's aunt proves effective, they will abuse that method to the end. Back in the city, Soo-hyun's father, Chairman Jong, is standing in the rain. He is still mourning the loss of his son, and he promises to get revenge for him. He promises to make Se-young's death more painful than his, and he will also make everyone who turn a blind eye suffer. Of course, this includes the president, who saved his own daughter but not his son. After the funeral for the kids were over, their bereaved families held a press conference. In front of all the cameras, the families condemned Se-young for murdering their kids. They also condemn the incompetent government for failing to protect its citizens. Their proclamation spread all over the internet, but this was just the beginning of the controversy. The media also highlighted the 100 innocent military and police casualties. They were just doing their jobs, but they ended up getting murdered by Se-young. Public opinion was livid against Se-young. Those who supported him and revered him as a hero disappeared, while those who thought of him as a violent terrorist rose in numbers. Comments on social media changed their tunes and are now bashing Se-young's name. In summary, Se-young became a public enemy. In his presidential office, President Sung-chul cries while he watches a video of his daughter's death. He apologizes to his daughter for failing to save her and promises to get revenge. He then wipes his tears when someone knocks on his door. His visitor is Sang-hyun, head of the National Intelligence Service. However, Park tells Sung-chul that someone else would actually advise him this time. He gestures over to his side, and it was the old man who was with teacher Yang. The old man's name is Yang Yun-gol. After being seated, Director Park explains to Sung-chul that old man Yang is the one who laid the foundation of the country. He did so until he retired from the Ministry of Security, but now he is returning from retirement to give advice. He knows of a possible way to murder Se-young. Sung-chul gets excited and quickly asks old man Yang what he needs. Yang then explains his plan. The first thing they need to do is arrest Da-hoon, the last of the 8 targets still alive. Meanwhile, a large hunk of rock hits the building where Da-hoon was hiding. The soldiers prepare themselves as Se-young appears in the streets. The soldiers don't know what to do since they receive conflicting reports on whether to retreat or not. One cop takes matters into his own hand, and he walks forward. He then tells Se-young that he is prepared to fight him one-on-one. He warns Se-young that it's not all about size and strength, it's also about skills. The cop is so tall and bulgy with muscles that he is almost the same size as Se-young. He introduces himself as the former boxing world champion and challenges Se-young to a duel. The cop lifts his arms in a ready stance, but Se-young's punch was so quick that the cop couldn't even react to it. He was just hit and flung back into the building. Meanwhile, the soldiers receive their new orders. They should not engage with Se-young, but just report his movements. Se-young looks up and notices a group of helicopters overhead. Da-hoon is already being evacuated and is in one of these helicopters. The helicopters then split up and flew in different directions, thus confusing Se-young on which one Da-hoon is in. Se-young's fury rises. He jumps to the side of the building, leaving the stunned soldiers behind. Se-young lands in Da-hoon's room, but only a picture of him with the other bullies is left inside. On the other side of the street, Xian and her group are still on the rooftop. Xian is watching the video of Soo-jang's death and laments that she wasn't the one to murder her. The agent beside Xian, Agent Lee, then receives a call. It was from the dean, instructing them to return. This surprises Agent Lee, since Se-young is literally right there. However, the dean explains that Chinese spies in the city are looking for Xian. Agent Lee suggests that only Xian return with her guards, but the dean reiterates how important Xian's safety is. Xian is a symbolic figure for them, and she will be the spearhead in their takedown of the government. Agent Lee finally understands and promises to escort Xian back herself. Before the call ends, the dean warns Agent Lee to make sure that Xian also doesn't leave without permission. Meanwhile, Old Man Yang, President Sung-chul, and Director Park head deep into the forest in a helicopter. A military unit is posted in the area, but Yang points to a nearby tunnel that is their destination. As they ride deep into the tunnel, Sung-chul tries to ask them where they're going, but the others don't want to spoil the surprise. Inside the tunnel, Sung Chul was surprised to see another door, this one heavier and much larger than the one outside. When the doors opened, a much larger space appeared before them. Yang finally explains to Sung Chul that this is the place where they will capture Se-young. Sung Chul gets irritated at his words and points out that Se-young would just destroy that place. Se-young survived a missile attack, so that place would surely not hold him. However, Yang clarifies that they prepared a scenario to neutralize Se-young, and it's a method that has already been verified in the past. This confuses Sung Chul, so Yang narrates how, in the past, there was already a person that exceeded the limits of a human and is very similar to Se-young. This incident happened 30 years ago. Sung Chul doesn't believe Yang's words, because as president, he would have surely known if such a thing happened. Everyone in the country is panicking over Se-young, so it's impossible that something similar already happened before. Yang then points out that it's easier to control information 30 years ago, unlike now, where there's instant messaging or social media. However, there's another reason that people don't know about it. It's probably because the citizens remember it differently. In fact, Sung Chul probably knows about it too. Yang then mentions the name Maruchi. Sung Chul notices that Director Park's face reacts to the name. When he asks him, Park admits that Maruchi was the Korean CIA's top agent. However, Maruchi, unlike Se-young, is now dead. Sung Chul asks them why they eliminated such a strong person when they were working for the government. Thus, Yang had to explain that the ones who captured Maruchi and created this place are actually not them. It was the North Korean government. Maruchi successfully murdered 3 North Korean military squads, all by himself. Not only that, he also did this while being younger than Se-young is now. However, the story doesn't end there. Maruchi was only captured by the North Koreans, but not murdered. The North Koreans didn't want to murder him, so he was able to escape. Maruchi instead died while taking down a Japanese submarine. He wasn't able to escape when the submarine sank. Back in the city, the cops are evacuating all the citizens nearby because Se-young is going around looking for Dahoon. On his walk, Se-young ended up reaching his former middle school. He jumps and lands on top of the school. While standing there, he remembers back when he tried to tell the teachers about his issues. However, the teacher just disregarded his concerns. Se-young can also see from where he's standing the old location by the trash bin where he was bullied every day. He recalls all the threats and hurtful words thrown at him. Throughout his struggle, the only one to take his hand and help him was Shion. Shion, whose face is now bloodied. Shion, who jumped out of a building for him. He recalls how his parents burned to death, and he remembers his quest for revenge. Se-young screams all his pain to the world and punches down on the building, leaving his former school in two. Meanwhile, President Sung Chul is meeting with Dahoon and his father, Hun-suk. He informs them that Se-young might have found out their location. He then tells them that it might be because they are hiding and moving as a family instead. Sung Chul suggests to them that they should just evacuate Dahoon. Moving one person would, of course, be safer and more secret than moving all of them, and they already prepared a hideout for Dahoon. Dahoon's father profusely thanks the president for his help. A few minutes later, Dahoon is now in a car driving away with Sung Chul. Dahoon is still worried about his parents, but Sung Chul assures him everything will be fine. What Dahoon didn't notice is that Sung Chul's face is currently filled with anger. That's all for today. For the next part, make sure to subscribe my channel Fire Recap. And you don't forget to share and like the video. I am out.